Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Welcome one, welcome all to SimSpeed TV. It is time, of course, once again for V8SCOPS. The 2024 season has absolutely gone off with some fantastic races across a variety of circuits, and we come to one of the classics for the 8th round of the season here at Sonoma Raceway in Sonoma, California. A brilliant track with loads of elevation change, very similar indeed to many of the tracks that we have down in Australia. Kind of reminds me of Amaru Park, but a little bit longer in places. We're running the classic NASCAR layout, which cuts out a good portion of the circuit's infield. And to bring it to you all live here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Kick, it's me, Reese Gardner. Scott Rankin is with me in the commentary box, and Jay Kennedy is behind the scenes pressing all the buttons. Scott, Sonoma, it's a classic, and for very good reason.
Yeah, because it's tough, it's technical, it's difficult. Realistically, it kind of almost has a street circuit vibe to it. The curbs are so large throughout so many different sectors to this lap as well. You've got to balance the car, you've got to rotate it. It actually really reminds me of Townsville, to be perfectly honest, just the walls are probably a little bit further back.
Yeah, exactly. And plenty more elevation change besides. Sonoma is located on Sears Point at the very end of a mountain range coming up on the San Francisco Bay. And it is a beautiful section of the United States. It is wine country. And when it's wintertime, it's lovely and green. But in iRacing, it's brown and dry because it was scanned in the middle of summer. Of course, this is the classic NASCAR layout that you see in white. The alternative layouts of the circuit are in red. And the big thing that defines this layout, Scott, is the fact that we have the 4A complex, that tarmac runoff area you can use all of if you need to. Basically, the track limits are the tire bundle and the wall that juts out on the exit.
Yeah, so it's commitment, it's bravery, it's bounce it up and over the curbs. How much of the room are you going to try and use on the left-hand side of the road? How much of the inside curb are you going to take as well? What's the car setup like? Are you able to carry the speed over the curb? Well, there's a lot of bouncing around this track, so you better have a car that's set up enough to cope with that, to keep the tire largely in contact with the ground. But you mentioned it. Then look at the complex of corners from all the way at 7A all the way down to the kink at turn 10. It is really technical. It's about balance. It's about making sure that you got the car balance right. Did you adjust your bars just to the right amount as the fuel burns out of the car to make sure that you can carry enough speed? Have you overdone the tires? Is the car pivoting? Is it pivoting too much? You know, these are all the big things about carrying speed. And then probably the premium braking opportunity and overtaking opportunity to run down at 11.
Yeah, indeed. The Turn 11 complex is going to be one of the places we'll see some of the most interesting moves here. It's the prime overtaking spot on the circuit, and the entire second half of the lap leads up to it. There's a lot of excellent pieces of racetrack, though, around this place. Of course, we should go to the racing action very shortly, and Split 2 is the first one up. And, well, the grid is going to be set by the pre-qualifying order. A 30-lap race with a 15-minute time limit. 35-lap race, I have just been informed, with a 60% fuel tank restriction and a compulsory pit stop. The drivers will not be able to make it to the end. And, well, I guess the window is going to be wide open in terms of when they can come into the pits. It's obviously got a lot of history at this place. Has V8SCOPS, and I'm looking forward to seeing it continue tonight.
Yeah, the difficulty with this one, Reese, is you want to be the first driver to make their last pit stop, right? So you only want to make one pit stop. You want to make sure you've gone far enough into the race for that to count. Safety car percentage, I would say tonight, is probably going to be a little bit higher than you would normally expect to see. And that's because of all the challenging elements that we talked about. That complex at 4A, the wall is really, really tight. If you got somebody right up and on you, just a little bit of contact, you're in the fence. That's going to rip the left front tire off for certain, or the left rear tire off. That's a safety car straight away. So do you make your pit stop? Do you look for the undercut? And when we get to split 1 later on, well, you got 2 compulsory pit stops to make. If there's only one safety car, you don't want to be the guy that's sat around the entire time and, well, the safety car comes out and you've still got 2 pit stops to make. So look, there's a lot of nuance to this place. First and foremost, you create opportunity by having a fast car. If you don't have a car that can look after its tires and can run long and really leverage pace out of the car at multiple different points of the stint, well, you've got no options. You're kind of limited to the undercut strategy and then try and hold everyone up. I get the feeling there's going to be a bump and run at some point. Race control tends to be busy around this place.
Yeah, race control is very busy indeed around Sonoma. There's a lot of places where, you can try and move up the inside, but it's obviously not ideal. And there's plenty of incidents that have happened over the years. Race control having heavy involvement in the conduction of V8SCOPS events here at Sonoma. Well, we're entering the final few minutes of practice here just to get things warmed up, and I'm looking forward to seeing who will end up on top. Mark Poynton is the man on top in the practice session at the moment, and looking forward to seeing if he can put down any further quick laps, because David Coleman is right there with him. It seems at the very least the pace is going to be very close.
And Mark Poynton, in terms of things at the moment, he's been putting a real purple patch of form together in terms of vets. Maybe it's just this place. Maybe he just likes bouncing over the curbs. But in terms of his overall race pace as of late, he's actually been starting to really, really turn that wick up and find himself. I really don't think it'll be too far away before he'll be consistently making his way into Split 1 and starting to challenge a little bit. Whatever it is he's doing, I'm going to say it's probably just more laps in the car. They always talk about more laps in the car. But he looks comfortable, he looks confident, he's just running really, really well, and I'm so glad to see it because he's also just a genuinely nice guy.
Yeah, absolutely. There's loads of great people in this community, and he's just one of them. Byron Pierce currently in 3rd spot at the moment, and the Alpha Venturi Mustang is looking quite quick around here, barely 0.2 of a second off Mark Poynton's time in practice, and he's demonstrating that very difficult turn 3 and 4 section. You go over the crest of the hill, and it's blind on the way across the top, and then you see just how close they get to the wall there. They obviously run all the way outside the bounds of the racetrack. You're allowed to do that, but you need to be careful not to lose it over those very harsh curbs.
Yeah, well, the thing is, if you lose it, the rear snaps sideways, you can't save it. You've got to make sure that you're... The only way you're saving it really is to be underdriving the car a little bit. If you're underdriving the car, well, you're probably going backwards. So it's risk versus reward out there. That's the tricky aspect of it. You've got to nail it. Pit lane entry tonight, oh my word, feeds right off what the racing line is in that final corner as well. And getting the pit lane entry right, how many guys over the years have hit that outside barrier just because they've locked a front on the way into the pit lane, into the barriers, and then it checks a whole bunch of guys up. You're going to see that pit lane entry be an incredibly important aspect to the racing tonight.
Yep, indeed. A very important aspect of the racing indeed, as Glenn Boyce makes his way across the start-finish line. The standing start's going to be a big issue as well in both of our races tonight, because the back of the field's going to be starting around the kink, and you could see it as Glenn Boyce was making his way through there. The track is lined with concrete barriers along the start-finish straight. It's basically like a street circuit.
Yeah, I mean, little bits and pieces. That sector of the track, absolutely, the barriers are right there. When you get offline at turn 1 as well, once you pinch a brake, very difficult to pull it up. Used to be that basically once you're off at turn 1, that was it, you're finding the barriers. Once we've got that grass adjustment, you know, a little bit more capability to pull the cars up when they do go offline, you know, that does change a little bit. Bruce Tannock's putting together some reasonable sectors, and he's a little bit of a change. That's not Bruce Tannock, that's the 228 machine. But yeah, look, I mean, it's the difficulty is that, you know, trying to, you've got to take risks, right? That whole first sector is just about loading the car up, have it gone it too deep, have it done whatever. And then think about the NASCAR race here in the Xfinity Series. Well, to be honest with you, Shane Van Gisbergen won one because he got into the rear bumper of Austin Hill. That's not going to happen tonight. That's not allowed, but that's an incredible moment for Australian motorsport in just the most recent history. So, I mean, it's a tough and technical track, this one. It's going to be about getting your time in. It's going to be about making sure that you get a jump off of it. And check this run out. That kink there's going to be cars starting at the back end of that, runs it all the way out to the right-hand side. Wall flows it into the left-hand side once again, climbs the hill, slowly dropping it back down through the gears. You've got to carry momentum, you've got to carry speed, but you can't carry too much because you'll just miss that apex. Touch of the grass on the left-hand side, all of a sudden you'll have a car alongside you, and that's for the very tricky complex. It's off camber, down and uphill yet again through turns 3 and 4. For Scott McKenzie's starting to find a little bit of pace as well. And the other thing to keep in the back of your mind is Enduro season's only just around the corner, and there's been quite a few names announced that'll be running in the Logitech Pro Series as co-drivers, and they'll be looking to get themselves some more experience working hard here tonight, and probably working with new teammates that they've never had the opportunity to work, which will change things. There's so much change in the air, which we haven't seen for a good while in the Australian motorsports scene, and the V8 scene in particular. And drivers finally starting to find themselves. Now following on with Mark Poynton as he begins his run down the hill. Just barely touches the inside curve. Doesn't run it all the way out to the wall. Doesn't try and flow the corner. And the key is making sure you balance the car through this sector all the way out to the left-hand side, skips the curbs on the right, back to the left-hand side, carry that curb, open up the next right-hander. This is where you start to carry your speed. Not too much oversteer, you'll burn your rear tyres that way. Get it all the way back to the left-hand side on the curb, as much of that curb as you possibly can. Turn it in a little bit early to the right-hander, just to make sure you carry the speed, carry it all the way through, and then on the anchors really hard. You can hug all the way through the inside here, but you want to square off and sort of straight line the exit, get good drive off the corner. But at the same time, if you're getting pressured, you might just run it in a little bit deeper up the final corner. Minute and 20 seconds remains on the practice session before we jump into racing for Split 2 here tonight. Reminder, 35 laps will be the duration, and lap times in and around the 1:11 marker. We're going to be in for about a 45-minute affair. And Bruce Tannock will be hoping that that is the final mistake he makes with the rear end of the car tonight. And Reese, this place, it just oozes something going wrong at some point. You can't prevent something from going wrong. It's going to happen. The difficulty is somebody else going to get into you? You're going to get into somebody else, and how do you manage that immediately thereafter?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, in places like this section, there's plenty of space off the racetrack for you to, you know, go off and avoid an incident. But then there's plenty of places around here, like at turn 11, where there's not much room for error. The track does widen up quite a bit, but if someone decides to pull a huge dive on you and they're not able to pull up in time, then all you're going to do is head to the wall. So I think you're just going to have your eyes on stalks around Sonoma. You don't have any options for resting around this place. Basically, there's only a few points on the circuit where you're not braking or turning at the same time.
Yeah, practice is now done, so strap the belts back on, tighten them up a little bit, make sure you've got the race set on, make sure you've got the fuel, make sure you take a few deep breaths right now before we get into that gridding phase, and make sure that you don't overfire the engine. Make sure you found yourself that handbrake as well. Get your line locker all ready to go.
Oh yeah, of course. The grid is set from pre-qualifying and we're ready to go with Stephen Banks on pole position here. Tim Mulford for Phoenix Racing Team is going to start alongside him on the front row of the grid. After them, we have Mark Poynton and Bruce Tannock starting out a 4th spot. Good performance from him. Byron Pierce starts in 5th alongside Lewis Greathead for Vermilion Motorsports. Rob Crisdale, we saw him active in the GTC support category on Friday. He's going to start alongside Henry King, who also took part there. Andrew Ritchie and David Coleman will round out our top 10. It's Peter Pavlovich and Steve Vella in 11th and 12th, with Scott McKenzie and Glenn Boyce 13th and 14th. Our 15th and final car on the grid is going to be Brendan Murdoch. A pretty small grid by V8SCOPS standards, but I think the drivers will be happy for some relief around Sonoma. Traffic is always an issue here.
Yeah, boy, isn't it? And I mean, the other side of that coin is, shorter grid, less issues, hopefully get yourself nice and cleanly through it. If we can go all 35 laps green, that's going to challenge the drivers just an extra little bit as well, because, you kind of expect a safety car when you come to this place. But now it's, throw all that out the window. I get the feeling it's a historic track, but it's sometimes not the most popular track. And I think you mentioned one of the bigger aspects. You're just so busy around the lap that, I get the feeling the winter sads have crept in and a few guys have snuck away on holidays.
Yeah, most likely. It's a nice sunny day here in Perth, but still bitterly cold overnight. So
what's the sun look like, Reese? I haven't seen that in a while.
It's big and it's bright. That is all I can really say. Well, we're about to start the race here, and we get ready to go here at Sonoma Raceway. The revs rise, and we get ready for split 2 of V8SCOPS Round 8. We are away. Lovely launch from Stephen Banks. Good initial getaway from Bruce Tannock, but the second phase wasn't with him. The top 4 have already broken away from the rest of the field. That is crazy there. Everyone behind them has some kind of issue as Bruce Tannock brakes, locks up the brakes into turn 2. Contact between Byron Pierce and Andrew Ritchie, swapping for P6 and P7. They're going to be side by side coming into turn 3 as the pressure is on up front. Tim Mulford under pressure from Mark Poynton, but looks like a reasonably clean start otherwise. There's a few cars with issues though. David Coleman is slowing down massively as the field makes their way down to the hairpin, the first hairpin of the lap for the first time. David Coleman resuming position at the back of the field. We are already very spread out.
Yeah, and the reason that David Coleman's immediately redressing that one is that's just the way he goes about his business. Got slightly up the inside of Lewis Greathead, but not quite far enough to demand racing room. Tagged him, and he wanted to redress it. Regardless of both of the races being ruined, it's just the way that he goes about his business. It's the right thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. David Coleman, a very sporting competitor here in V8SCOPS. One of the good guys, you would say. Up front, it's looking pretty locked in for Stephen Banks at the moment. The drivers just need to get into a rhythm. It's at this point in the race that the tyres are at their best. As soon as you start the stint, after about 10 laps or so, you start falling off in terms of grip. We'll get another view of what happened here with... oh, wow, okay. That's a very close start indeed. I believe that's Coleman we're on board with, making contact with the number 98 of Lewis Greathead and spinning him around. Coleman initially got going again, but decided to redress the position to avoid the ire of race controllers. I believe that's Crisdale there that's had a massive moment on the exit of 4A. Goodness gracious. Well done to keep control of that, but he's lost touch with Byron Pierce at the moment, who is chasing down Andrew Ritchie.
And that explains it, because you had Byron Pierce and I believe it was also Tannock, both spinning tyre, or well, it was Greathead that was spinning tyres as well. But that's why we ended up with that such big break, as Tannock's actually got to slice down the inside and get to the final corner.
Yes, Bruce Tannock and Henry King, meanwhile, swapping places briefly. King was hard on the brakes at the hairpin, but Lewis Greathead staying ahead of him there. Sorry, I think I might be looking in slightly the wrong place on the circuit there. Different car I was looking at. Andrew Ritchie is the man he was racing with, and Ritchie is setting the fastest lap of the race there at the moment. I'm sure that's going to change very shortly with the pace that the leaders have, but race control already deciding that there's no need to further investigate the incident between Greathead and Coleman, as the position was redressed right away.
Yeah, I mean, tough knock for both of them. They're both towards the rear end of the field, but it just means they've got to get their heads down, get back after it, see what they can recover. They might be able to find some pace. They might be able to recover as the race necessarily goes on, but it's all in their own court now.
Yep, indeed it is. Good amount of space between the cars at the moment, so we're still waiting for the drivers to get into the rhythm and start chasing each other down. But Tim Mulford is under pressure from Mark Poynton here in the Mustang at the front of the field, and Poynton setting some pretty good sector times from what I'm seeing. The fight is certainly on behind as well between King, Ritchie and Pierce. Stephen Banks continuing to lead the race by half a second, and that's just about all the gap you can get here at Sonoma.
Drops are certainly going to play a big key. Big factor in that turn 10 on that most recent lap was Byron Pierce, very, very out of shape and drifted it out into the runoff area. So used a lot of attitude there, and it's tricky, right? All these guys are lapping so close together. Pierce is going to have a go at 4A. That's brave.
Ooh. Yeah, you don't usually see passes being made down there, and he had a look but had to back out of it. So now he'll have to wait potentially for turn 11 to get it going there. Another view of the number 56 of Byron Pierce here, running off the track, coming down through turn 10. Easy does it. It's not ideal with so little space on the exit of that corner. They're about to go through that corner again here, and Poynton, he's lost touch with Tim Mulford ever so slightly, not as close as he was, but this is a pretty long race by Sonoma standards, so there's plenty of time for him to get it done.
Jason Fewin's out in the YouTube chat going, poor track selection, I elected to give it a miss. Look, I'm going to be honest, that's my thoughts on Sonoma and racing around here as well. It does create some good action to commentate though. Pinch of a break from Henry King on the run down into the hairpin on that lap as well, so he's starting to wear over on the front, and Tannock's starting to recover. Poynton's found some time, so all of these different cars, they're making time in different sections. It looks like Poynton's very, very strong through the first sort of complex. I'm watching Byron Pierce is quite strong. Byron Pierce is going to have another go.
Yeah, here we go. He's going to get alongside on the way into 4A, but Ritchie, oh my goodness, they make contact, and Ritchie is shuffled out of the way. There was plenty of overlap between the cars at the time of contact, as far as I could see, but Ritchie was obviously very late on the brakes there to try and keep the position. Another view of it, and yeah, I don't know what race control is going to think of that one.
Yeah, they're going to have a look at several angles. That one doesn't tell enough of a story for us to be able to even remotely go close to putting a ruling on that. There might have been a slight chink. I think Ritchie was the first driver to turn in, and Pierce is pinned up against the curb, so if he bounces over that curb, he's always going to turn him. It's tricky. Like, that's why you don't see a move at 4A.
Well, here we go, a bit of a closer view of it. So fully alongside at that point, but then just at the rear quarter there. So I don't know if that's enough overlap to justify making the maneuver, but you could argue that he was very committed to the corner on the inside there was Byron Pierce. So, yeah, we'll have to wait for race control's word on that. Meanwhile, the battle for the top three is closing in. Currently, Bruce Tannock with a great run of times. He was the fastest car on track last lap by, and he's putting pressure on Poynton and Mulford as Banks is continuing to hold on.
Yeah, I just wonder whether or not Mulford's just sort of checking him up a little bit, just trying to manage the tyres, because that's the biggest thing, right? You talk about opportunity, and what happens is if you've got really good long-run pace, you can do whatever you need to do in terms of your racing stints, right? If you need to run long here, but you know that you've got really, really good long run pace, well, that just means you can go as far as you want. You're going to lose a little bit of track position, but if you think you can make the overtakes, all of a sudden you're looking quite pretty for the back end of the race. The difficulty with Sonoma, overtaking opportunity and overtaking ability incredibly high, which means that managing to use the tyres to the best of your ability is not easy.
Oh, that's Crisdale there hitting the wall on the exit of 4A. That's the exact danger I was talking about at the top of the show. And Crisdale, gathering some damage from that, is going to take his pit stop now. He'll have to get repairs done in addition to taking the mandatory service there. Man, that's a shame there for Crisdale, but I could see from the very start of the race he was in danger of collecting that wall.
Yeah, he was really pushing the margins as well. Keeping an eye on the lap times just recently as well. Byron Pierce looks really, really strong. The big issue for him, he's cooked up in behind Henry King, and King's just not necessarily making some of the apexes he necessarily likes. So King's very strong through the fast section right here, but it's the slow corners where he's struggling.
Yeah, and that's not ideal because Sonoma has a lot of slow corners. That means that Byron Pierce is going to go for the dive at turn 11. He's fully alongside and gets the move done cleanly. Henry King, of course, very aware in the car, so he was able to make room, saw Byron Pierce was coming and decided not to fight it. So that's another position up there for Byron Pierce, but he'll still have that contact with Andrew Ritchie hanging over his head that race control, I presume, is still deliberating over. So he's going to try and make up as much time as he can, make hay while the sun shines, as now Poynton, again, the gaps are just ebbing and flowing here in the battle for second place. It looks like the racing incident has been ruled as netcode between Pierce and Ritchie, so Byron Pierce has gotten away with that one.
Yeah, difficult to call. I'm not, netcode, I mean, is an easy decision if there isn't definite netcode. I'm still sitting there and I'm going, oh, look, it's so tight. I just don't know that I could make a call confidently on that one. I'm comfortable the right decision's been made, though, so look, play on. It was tough, it was technical. How about this overtake from Coleman?
Yep, he's right by Steve Vella here, and you don't often see cars going side by side through the S's, but Coleman managed to get it done. Some great assertive driving from him, and Glenn Boyce will stand a chance here. Oh, wide, both cars ahead of him compromised, and so car 228 will try and go for the move here. Oh, he's sideways on the way into the hairpin. Great recovery, and Vella will try and hold on, but they'll make secondary contact on the exit, and Vella's around.
Yeah, Vella lost the rear, unfortunately, on the way out the other side, and that's what caused the line change. So, look, Coleman was brave. Coleman definitely had the pace and wanted to get through and on those guys to get on with his race, but, yeah, unfortunately for those guys behind.
Yeah, very unfortunate indeed. The top four starting to close up again. Stephen Banks has lost a couple of tenths on this lap to Tim Mulford. Poynton and Tannock are still right there. And looming in the background and steadily gaining is Byron Pierce, who was fastest last time by. He was a full 4 tenths faster than our leader. So this is going to rapidly become a 5-way battle for the lead of the race, I think.
Yeah, and I think the best thing that Byron Pierce can do is race on up to these guys, dive to the lane, because he's just going to force their hand. It may be a very, very early stop, but have a look at the long run pace that he's got. Remember what I talked about in giving yourself options? Well, the problem is if these guys hang around and keep fighting and squabbling over it with each other, he's going to eclipse them all. He looks after the tyres supremely well. He's in a really, really good spot, and that means he can go with the undercut. Having a long run pace doesn't just mean that you can overcut these guys, go really, really long. It also gives you the opportunity to undercut with confidence.
Yeah, indeed it does. He's got clear air ahead of him for the time being, and he'll be able to use the tyres to their maximum capability. And yeah, I agree. As soon as he catches up to them, he's probably going to dive for the pit lane and get the undercut. Maybe he'll be able to hold on as the tyres wear off towards the end. Banks is not getting away from these guys now. Mulford, now that he's in a rhythm, really starting to pressure him.
Yeah, the problem is, can he pull the overtake off? I just don't think he can, because where he needs to be far enough up, his best bet is sort of just to try and just do some saving, give himself, again, talking about options, fuel saving is another one of the ways that you can go about it. I definitely think that Mulford will want to trigger the undercut on Banks, but the problem for these guys right now, oh, he's got to the inside.
Wow, that was a very late move to the inside there from Tim Mulford, at least late in the corner. I wasn't expecting Banks to go wide on the exit there. They'll be side by side into turn one. Mulford, I think, wisely backing out of that one. It's hard to make moves coming into turn two. You got to be very aggressive and confident in the braking ability of your car to pull that one off. But that is the sign that Tim Mulford is showing to Stephen Banks. I am coming. You are not going to be safe in this race lead for long.
And the difficulty was mistake. Tiny little mistake from Stephen Banks that just drifted him wide. Replay here is going to show how Andrew Ritchie got by. So it's going to be a mistake, I think, from Henry King.
Yeah, oh, he just loses the rear into the hairpin and runs wide. Thankfully, the track is incredibly wide there, and, well, he managed to line it up for a great exit, but I think Andrew Ritchie was just, immovable there, and King backed out of it. King's a very careful driver, and that usually gets him good results, though.
Yeah, got himself enough room to recover from that one. Ritchie was there. Tanek! Oh, Bruce Tanek!
Oh, easy does it. Oh, he's got to be careful on the power there, spinning up the wheels. That's going to allow Mark Poynton to get back by, and this offers the opportunity to Byron Pierce now. Is this going to be the opportunity that Pierce is looking for to get his pit stop done? Tanek will try his best to stay in touch, but Mark Poynton, with that pass and the slight mistakes for both of them on the exit, losing touch now with the top two.
Yeah, and that squabbling again. Oh.
Easy does it.
He is just all over the back. He's got the best pace of this top group by a reasonable margin at the moment. He's going to have to do something with it. Now he tries.
Up the inside, but Bruce Tanek is not willing to let him go here. Side by side on the exit. Tanek's got to have the inside line and the advantage for those two left-handers there and stay ahead coming into the S's. So now Byron Pierce is up against people who will not let him by easily, and this is going to be the opportunity for him, I think. We'll see if he comes into the pit lanes. He does run wide and dips a wheel into the gravel on the exit. He's not going for the pits. He's going to stay out a bit longer. Tanek locks up, and Pierce is going to get by.
Well, he's not going to get by. Not done just yet. Bruce Tanek's going to get drive back out the other side. So side by side when they get to the line. I think Byron Pierce is going to have to yield. Oh, a little bit of bump and grind.
Oh, how hard is he going to push this? Oh, dear.
He's
just
still
backing out. Oh, and he turns him. Oh, no. That's not how we wanted that battle to end. So Byron Pierce spinning Bruce Tanek at turn two there. Byron wanted the move, but if you have to force the car out of the way to make it happen, it's not quite on. And I think now that's definitely going to be grounds for race control to take a serious look at him.
Yeah, they'll definitely be investigating. The tricky part for Tanek is that he did jink across, but it was because he was deep into the corner. I don't know whether or not he was going to pull that one up. Pierce was certainly being aggressive. Did he have to be aggressive? Yeah, look, he's got to pull a trigger because he's got overlap. He's got enough opportunity to do so. There was a mistake from Tanek that brought that about, but tricky.
Yeah, very. Let's see on the replay then, yeah. I feel like if Pierce wasn't there, then Tanek would have made the corner. The move wasn't on. He just didn't have enough overlap to get it done.
Yeah, now Tanek's going to dive to the lane and get that pit stop out because he's on really, really used rubber now. They've been for a right royal ride. So he needs to get off of those tyres at this point in time. Difficulty now. So when we were talking about the undercut earlier, I said you had to have long run pace. And Tanek was just starting to slide. I wonder whether or not that was just him just being a touch too aggressive with trying to get the moves done. I think he might be able to look after the tyres. Certainly was able to close in on that lead pack. Now he's stuck on this strategy.
Yeah, he is. He's going to have to do a bit of tyre preservation in the remaining half of the race. And, well, we're going to have 20 laps to go. 21, I should say, when the drivers come across the line next. So Tanek's pit stop is just about complete. A 12.2 second stop for him. That's a little bit longer than I was expecting, but he probably had a slight bit of damage that he would have wanted repaired.
Yeah, unfortunately. Look, I mean, now he's got to get after it. He's got an opportunity here. Fastest lap times on the server, remember, around the 12.5 marker. Bruce Tanek's actually run a 12.4 as his best lap time. Most recent laps for our leader, 13.4. So about a second fallen off. He was only going to be about 4 or 5 seconds back off the lead. Opportunity, if he can run this for 5 laps, he came very early. There is a chance that he can set this up nicely.
Yeah, he may very well have some clear air he can take advantage of. Meanwhile, Steve Vella and Brendan Murdoch battling over position number 12. Vella, of course, on a recovery himself. He hasn't gone into the pits yet, but trying his best to recover from the spin. He actually got past Brendan Murdoch earlier in the lap, and it's unclear exactly how this is going to pan out. Just looks like Murdoch was wide in the hairpin there and decided to let Vella go.
Yep, and yielding, I mean, depends on what kind of run these guys are on. They're off just enjoying a little bit of their own racing action and having quite a lot of fun with it. The tricky part now for these guys is that they've seen Tanak peel off, but he's not necessarily right up and on the back of them. But now how do you resolve that? What do you do in terms of the strategy? Because you can leave it probably 2 to 3 laps, but you can't leave it really any longer than that. The problem being it's still going to be a significant run to home. Can you manage it? And remember, Banks was slow early on. He's now recovered. He now looks quite good.
Yeah, Banks has been under pressure occasionally, but he's been able to keep in a good rhythm and look after his tyres. This is on board with Ritchie, I believe, as Tanak was recovering. Oh, that was rather close there. The incident had just happened between Pierce and Tanak up ahead of him at that point, and I think a bit of a lucky getaway.
Yeah, certainly not all that easy as well. So, I mean, he turned in, you put the car in the right spots. He's now running along with that one. And for Ritchie, I mean, he's already had contact. It's not been the cleanest race of his own. But yeah, look, I think it's going to be a difficult night. Only 15 cars in the server, but look at the street circuit nature that's already caused a whole bunch of drama. This place just writes stories, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's why I adore this place whenever V8SCOPS comes here. This is one of the original classic circuits of V8s on iRacing. You know, it was one of the original most used tracks on the official schedule, and that's the reason why it's made so many appearances in V8SCOPS. As news from race control comes in, drive-through penalty for Byron Pierce for the contact with Tanak, and the opportunity beckons here for Tim Mulford. He's going to be the first of our lead group to go to the pits.
Yeah, I think that's the right call because he certainly was there and thereabouts, but at the same time, he's got the opportunity to get out in front and lead. And I don't know whether or not we haven't seen any of these guys obviously release. We've only been able to look at and have a look at Stephen Banks' pace. It's been okay, but it's not been brilliant. There's a huge opportunity here, though.
Yeah, big opportunity indeed. It depends on where he comes out, though, because he doesn't want to come out with traffic ahead of him, because otherwise he won't be able to take full advantage of those fresh tyres right away. Tanak, meanwhile, making his way up into 12th. He's past Brendan Murdoch, who comes into the pits, and Mulford is going to come out just behind Glenn Boyce there. So this probably isn't ideal for Mulford. He'll be hoping that Boyce comes into the pits at the end of this lap and releases him.
Yeah, that's the best that he could possibly do, or you know, comes back, he just gets out of the way. I mean, he's got a lot of opportunities, and Mulford's already getting to his inside, by the way, getting aggressive, ran deep at 4A. Mulford gets the job done, so it hasn't cost him too much. The problem being, he only gets a little bit of an opportunity. Pierce is going to fire into the lane. That'll be to serve the drive-through.
Yeah, indeed. He won't be allowed to take service, and Stephen Banks comes in as well from the race lead. Andrew Ritchie on the way in. We got news as well of a 5-second time penalty for Bruce Tanak for an unsafe rejoin there that we saw on the replay from Andrew Ritchie's perspective, and the pit lane is alive with action at the moment. 4 cars in the lane at this present time, and Mulford making his way down to the final hairpin of the lap. Let's see if that undercut's going to work for him. Stephen Banks still up on the jacks. He's waiting. 11.6 seconds stopped. Tim Mulford is going to come through just as Banks gets going again, and he's going to take the lead.
Yeah, what a good outlap. Got held up a little bit with traffic. Now the difficult part is if you're one of those guys that was in that lead pack, remember Pierce has been ejected from that with a drive-through penalty. Bruce Tanak's been ejected from that pack. Have a look at this join in here. I just got the feeling he was in that lane, and Mulford turned in with bravery.
certainly did. He was that was a bit of a Hail Mary maneuver, I think, throwing a bit of caution to the wind. It could very easily have been contact between those two. Now Pavlovich and Greathead up into third and fourth, waiting for the opportunity to come into the pits. Behind them, David Coleman's going to come in as the pass is made for Lewis Greathead. Peter Pavlovich will continue on for a while, but we'll see when these guys decide to come into the lane. They were way off the lead pack, so maybe it's in their best interests here to just try and run a little bit longer.
Interesting to note, though, if you're in Mark Poynton's shoes, now with all that drama that's sort of happened, it reduces effectively our lead pack to 3. What I'd expect Mark to do here, and what I think is in his best interest, create a tyre offset. Go long. Go another 5 or 7 laps. Make sure that you're going to pop out in that hole. Remember, the hole's about 6 seconds, and right now, Bruce Tanek, he is taking about 0.8 of a second out of him, so he's only got about another 3 or 4 laps that he can necessarily run, but create a tyre offset. Don't come in. Don't match what the opposition are doing, because if you do, you just end up in the same spot.
Yeah, indeed. He has to try something different if he wants a chance of advancing further in that top 3 battle, and he won't go for the pits this time. It looks like he's listening into us and following your advice there, Scott. He's deciding to stay out for a while longer. Meanwhile, Mulford and Banks, this is the effective race lead you're looking at the moment, currently occupying 6th and 7th on the track. Mulford was the fastest car on track last time by. We'll see if Banks can respond. He's a little bit wide there in turn 10, but now he is going to be the chaser, and sometimes that is a benefit.
Yeah, the difficulty with Sonoma obviously is being able to get that overtake done, but again, I think Mulford just looks stronger. I think Banks was actually being a little bit of a cork of the bottle out in front. But we didn't have much data to sort of really work on. Now we're getting the opportunity for the shoe to be on the other foot. Stevens, they've both got strengths in different areas. Mulford looks to be a little bit more of a balanced race car. Stevens just seems to really like the slow corners, and Mulford just can drag the car around. But he's struggling right now is Timmy Mulford. I wonder whether or not he might be protecting the tyre a little bit and actually trying to back up a little bit into Stephen Banks. He knows he's got the race lead. I wonder whether or not he's really trying to look after the tyre.
Yeah, I wonder too. He obviously was pushing very hard into turns 1 and 2 on that on this lap. So yeah, maybe just falling out of rhythm a little bit. Rhythm is so important at Sonoma. Meanwhile, up the front, Poynton is still staying out there, and I saw a big old slide from him before on the production feed. He is driving hard here to try and maintain the gap. He'll be being fed the lap times that Mulford and Banks are setting. 1:12.3 for Banks on the last lap, Mulford a 12.6. Let's see what times they set this time around. The 12.9 from Mark Poynton is responded to by a 12.4 from Mulford and a 12.6 from Banks. So not as much time lost on that lap. You never know. If Poynton is able to hold on to this, he can be super aggressive in the dying laps of the race and maybe be able to take the win from here just purely on the freshness of his tyres.
Based on those times, I'm actually looking at him and going, I really, really like the way this is all stringing together. Again, the difficulty, Tanek's now out to 7 seconds back off of this, guys. I think from Poynton's perspective, he's either got to come... I don't want him in the lane this lap, I want him in the lane next lap, but I don't think he can wait any longer than that. That's sort of the longest tyre offset. Going to give him about a 13-lap sprint to home, which is, I think, about the right time.
Yeah, 13 laps is pretty much bang on the usable maximum pace of the tyres. We've talked about it so much in the past, haven't we? Just how long the tyres last on these cars. They burn through the optimum phase very quickly, and then the grip falls off, but more likely the pace falls off. The drivers tend to report that the way the car drives doesn't tend to change all that much. It's just they aren't able to set the same lap times that they were able to set before.
Yeah, it just fades. It just wears down nice and evenly. You just see a consistent sort of fall off. You tend to see a lot more activity over the rear end. Sometimes, depending upon some setups, Haref is actually a really, really good example of it, where you do spend a lot of time turning the front axle. Road America can be another really, really good example, long lap, whereby you are spending a fair chunk of that time, particularly with the carousel. So you're looking for corners carousel styled to wear your front axle a lot more. So whereby you don't have that, so Sonoma, a lot of bouncy, a lot of point and shoot. even though the corners are a little bit longer for sharpish corners than you would necessarily like, you still do wear the rear end a lot more.
Yeah, indeed you do. Sonoma is a track that enjoys a pointy car. And speaking of points, Poynton is in the pit lane and, well, right to the box he will come. Lewis Greathead joins him in the box. Henry King and Peter Pavlovich still out there. The only two cars not to visit the pits during this race, and we're still waiting on the service stop for Byron Pierce. He's already been to the pits once, but to serve a penalty. Poynton now in the box, and the pit stop is almost complete for him. Is this going to be enough as Mulford and Banks both move past him? And wow, that is a long way behind that Mark Poynton's coming out, but he's going to be hoping that he'll be able to push hard on this fresh set of rubber.
Gee, I feel like I'm feeding strategy information straight into Mark Poynton's headset because he pit exactly on the lap that I wanted him to. So how about that in terms of things? He's running exactly to plan for me, and that's sort of how it evolves. When you're in a race like this where there is only one stop, and it's not necessarily, I've got to make, two compulsory pit stops, it becomes a game of chicken. It's a little bit different to what we're going to see from Split 1 a little bit later on. And it's like, okay, I can't do exactly what the other guys around me are going to do. If they are not pitted by a certain lap number, I'm diving in because I want to be the first to undercut. But if they've pitted a little bit early, well, I've got to really flip-flop it. And it's completely different to what you see from a NASCAR-style strategy. NASCAR-style strategy, you want to be in the next lap sort of in terms of everyone else. You do see a little bit of that here, but in NASCAR, your time differential and the way the tyres fall off is significantly quicker around a much shorter lap time. You get a lot more laps on the tyres, a lot more of that fall off. So generally with NASCAR, it's quite quick. You don't have the opportunity. With supercars, you do get an opportunity because the time difference isn't as major. You can stretch those margins. This is Mark, absolutely. If Mark wants to win this race tonight, this was the best way he was going to give himself an opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it remains to be seen whether or not it's going to work out as Bruce Tanak continues to run on here. It's such a shame that Tanak and Ritchie have both had the races that they've had, because they would easily be in contention with the lead pack if they hadn't had their incidents. Meanwhile, Scott McKenzie, 7th place at the moment. He's been out there for 6 laps. Henry King on fresh rubber here in the Team Jinx Shifters Mustang, and he's going to go for the move at turn 7. Easy does it up the inside, and he'll try his best to put the power down, but he'll have to wait a couple extra corners to get it done. He eventually does, though. Henry King up to P7.
Yeah. Really, really good job for him. And remember what I was talking about in terms of if you haven't got a strong car on the long run? Henry King didn't have that strong car, so he's actually cost himself quite a little bit. Now he's going to get the benefit of clear air, but he just had to take the edge off those tyres. How about the recovery drive, though, from David Coleman? Really moved his way back through the field.
Yeah, it's been a great recovery from David Coleman as he moves past Scott McKenzie on the way. Oh, well, we almost moved past Scott McKenzie on the way out of the hairpin. He's got to be careful here coming into turn 1. Again, it's not typically a place you see clean passes, but he's asserted himself up the inside. Room is given by Scott McKenzie. He's going to get a slightly better run around the outside of turn 2, but it's not enough. He has to yield on the way into 3.
Yeah, and he's just got some supreme pace at the moment as Coleman, and the difficulty being for, unfortunately, for Scott McKenzie, he's just pitted a little bit earlier than all these guys. Greathead's just come out of the pits as well. He's got supreme pace right now, and he'll be looking to use that one. This is going to be a really interesting battle pack.
Well, absolutely it is. This is the fight of the century, or at least it's starting to build up to that point and catching them massively. Did you see the lap time difference on the last lap? Get this, Mulford and Banks 13.3 and 13.1 respectively. Mark Poynton set a 1:11.9. That is the fastest lap of the race so far, and again, he's gone 2 seconds faster just about than both of these guys. What a run it is from Mark Poynton. And now it's just a case of him being able to make the move.
You know, remember how I was saying that you played strategy chicken earlier on? I think these two ahead of him have played strategy chicken on the fuel. Have a look at the pit lane transit times. They're actually seconds shorter. Now, Mulford was chasing, could have been saving a little bit. I reckon Poynton's just gone, let's throw all the fuel at this thing. I don't want to save. I want to be aggressive. I was never getting the undercut anyway, so let's make sure that I've got the fuel I need to be aggressive.
Yep, he'll be able to push harder. He won't have to lift off the power as much as Stephen Banks was right on the back of Mulford there and had his line compromised a little bit. Poynton will be looking at that and thinking now is the opportunity as into the pits comes Byron Pierce to take his actual pit stop. That's a good run from Poynton now to turn 10, but he's not close enough for a dive up the inside. Banks makes up a lot of time on Mulford, but he runs wide in the middle of the corner. That almost allows Poynton alongside.
Yeah, and remember what we were talking about all the way back at Winton? When you set up a move, it's the same sort of deal here. Because you've got the difficulty of the overtake, it's get him covering me. As soon as I see a guy blocking me, I know I'm in his head. I know I've got an advantage. I'm going to have a crack at this guy, but I'm going to be really shifty about it. I'm not going to let him know until I'm ready to pull the trigger.
Yeah, indeed. So keep an eye on this battle, and don't forget that behind these guys, Tanak has a 5-second penalty. So if something happens in this group, Andrew Ritchie is looking at effective P3 in this race, which would be a great result for him. Remember, the top 3 in Split 2 are allowed to participate in Split 1 later on in the night if they so desire. And I'm sure all of these guys on screen would be relishing the opportunity for a run with the best. And yes, Banks is indeed in trouble. He was slightly offline through the S's. You need to be able to nail every apex through that section of the circuit. And he doesn't quite hit the curb either through turn 10. He's got to be careful. Poynton's having a look. Is he going to be aggressive enough on the brakes? No, he's not.
But again, Banks pinched the front right once more on the rundown in. Oh, Tanak got tagged!
Oh, no, by Andrew Ritchie, and King just sweeps through. Tanak, once again, a little bit too trigger-happy on the rejoin there. It's not the first time we've seen him almost clean up a car coming through.
Well, he's already got a penalty for it. So race control are going to look at that and go, the penalty was to say stop doing that. Ritchie absolutely is going to get a penalty for that. No, hands down. That's not even contestable. But you can't do that once. You can't do it twice. Tanak's going to get a big old slap over there. He got the slap on the wrist before. This one's now going to be a, hey, wise up, you're done.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll await the decision from race control if at all possible, and I think it's going to be a slam dunk penalty for Andrew Ritchie as well for turning him. So that basically leaves these 3 free to battle it out for the top 3 positions. Let's keep an eye out here on Mark Poynton, see if he can get by Stephen Banks. Mulford is just managing his pace in the middle of the lap here and solidly in the lead of the race, but he's going defensive here. He knows that he's in trouble now, and Stephen Banks is going to try side by side here. He tries to line up the exit, but going wide on entry allows Mark Poynton alongside.
And remember, getting to the inside of the last corner, if you're side-by-side in the exit, advantage goes back to the outside, and it's exactly what's happened again. Mulford's in a fuel hole. Mulford's 100% in a fuel hole. The biggest thing that's saving him is Stephen Banks' ability on the brakes at the moment. He is really struggling to pull that car up.
Absolutely, he is. This is Bruce Tanak once again. He loses it on his own and ends up collecting Lewis Greathead there. Greathead's up driving by David Coleman to find his way through on the outside there. But keep your eye on the top 3 once more. Defensive from Banks, or was it trying to get up the inside of Mulford? I think it might have been a bit of both.
I think it's Mulford fuel saving. I really do think it's Mulford fuel saving. But again, Banks got in there, pinched a brake. Drive-through penalty, Andrew Ritchie, which we thought absolutely that was coming. This time, though, Poynton's lost the nose of the car as they go through the S's.
Yeah, oh man, Mark Poynton, I think, is burning through the tyres here, trying to take advantage, but these 2 are proving very tough customers to find their way past. The gap closes again, and Henry King now stands a chance of getting past Andrew Ritchie on track, but he won't have to make the move. Obviously, Ritchie has just been assigned a drive-through, so he'll have to come into the pits before the end of the race there to serve it. How far behind can he keep Henry King? I think King now, with news of that penalty, will be thinking, man, if I could just get past him, I might be able to have a run at the top 3 if they come together.
Well, they're all slowing each other up at this point in time, and Henry King and Lewis Greathead have got a supreme amount of speed. 1.2 seconds Lewis Greathead just took out of the leaders. There's 5 laps left to run. He's probably a touch too far back. Oh, Banks was wide.
Oh, yeah, that's too wide out of turn 4, and that's the opportunity that Mark Poynton's been looking for. First one to the apex, and he'll be just ahead by the time they come through the left-handers. He's not going to complete the move right away, but there it is. He is finally up into second place, and now he can truly unleash his pace. A little bit of clear air ahead to Tim Mulford.
5 laps. He's going to have 5 and a bit laps left to run. But remember, we said Mulford's in a fuel hole. I don't know if he's covered himself back off out of this one at the moment, so he's got some work to do.
Yeah, well, Tim Mulford would certainly relish the opportunity for a win here, but even if he can't get it, if he can hold on to a position in the top 3, he'll be racing in Split 1 later tonight, which is just as much of a reward as winning in Split 2. We'll keep an eye on those lap times there, Greathead versus Mulford, and let's see when the lap time eventually comes in, what Lewis Greathead's taken out of him this time, a 1:12.4, still 0.6 faster than the leader at the moment. Lewis Greathead on some great form right now, but David Coleman was the fastest car on track that time.
Yeah, the problem is they're just so far back that it's going to become an issue. I don't think they're going to get there in time unless these guys start stoushing with each other. And look at Poynton. Look at how quick he is at the moment. He's already caught all that margin back up to Tim Mulford. He is the guy that sort of, this is all in his hands now.
Yeah, indeed. Oh, he got a much better line through the S's there, though. He's doing quite well at the moment to hold on to the pace where he can. Obviously not very strong under the brakes, but when it comes to going through those fast-flowing corners, Mulford, with that neutral car, as you were talking about earlier, definitely steadfast in his defence for the lead. 4 laps to go now as Andrew Ritchie comes into the pits to serve his penalty.
Yeah, had to bail by the wayside. Now what is Lewis Greathead able to do? Is he able to get all the way up to Henry King? And I reckon these guys are going to go toe-to-toe. That certainly spells that there might be a penalty on the cards at the back end of this race. Banks is now out of this one. Nothing more that he can do about it, but he can lock himself away a 3rd position. That'll be enough to transfer. And who knows, if it all comes to tears, that could be a race win too.
Yeah, certainly could. We don't know how hard Tim Mulford's going to try and defend that position when Poynton decides to get alongside Henry King. Meanwhile, you see how close Greathead and Coleman have gotten to him. This battle for 4th is going to be one to watch in the final few laps as well.
Well, you just said, how aggressive is Tim Mulford going to be? Tim Mulford only has one move. It's aggression. That's all he knows. That's the only way he goes about driving. So he is going to get the elbows out, don't you worry.
Yeah, I'm absolutely getting ready for this one as a car slow. Looks like that's Murdoch that stopped there on the exit of turn 10. Poynton almost collecting the pit entry wall there. That was a bit too close for comfort. 3 laps to go now, and I'm not seeing him make much headway on Mulford now. I get the feeling those tyres might be approaching past their best now.
Well, the thing is, when you've got good first-run pace, it's because you're being nice and balanced. You're being quite easy looking after the tyre. This stint's been all about aggression, all about trying to drive that car hard. And Tim Mulford's biggest ally might have been Stephen Banks.
Yeah, unfortunately, Banks has fallen by the wayside now. We're hearing news that Murdoch was slow because it was a slow down. He was clearing it at the exit of turn 10, and he's just let these guys go again. So, yeah, Brendan Murdoch not having a great race right now. He's been full of drama for him, but crucially, he is still running. He is a lap or so down, but we'll be able to see the checkered flag and be classified. This is on board with Coleman, and man, that would have been a wing mirror taken off.
Poynton's very close. He's actually just forced the cover out of Tim Mulford at the final corner. So this is perfect. This is what he needed, because now he can get drive off of this corner.
Yeah, how good is the drive? It looks like Mulford's drive was a little bit better as pressuring Henry King as Lewis Greathead nearly sneaks up the inside on the exit, but King, keeping it straighter, will get it defended there, and Poynton right on the bumper just about of Tim Mulford. This is the section where Mulford looks strong, but have a look at the exits that the Frog Leap Juiced Racing Mustang is taking. Lovely line across the top of the hill. Keep it straight on the exit and you'll get the run down the straight to turn 4. It's a very short straight, but any time you can get where you're gaining on the car in front is worth it.
And just in the last lap or so, Tim Mulford's rears have just become very, very active. All of a sudden, he's gone from having really, really good drive off to his drive's just gotten supremely worse, and the rear end of that car is waggling all over the place. If he misses an apex here, he's in trouble. I think Poynton's best opportunity was last lap, though.
Yeah, it's not losing track of my thoughts here. It's potentially there'll be another opportunity in the last lap here. But, yeah, I think if Tim Mulford can at least stay ahead coming into the turn 7 hairpin, then he'll certainly be in with the shot of winning here as David Coleman gets by Lewis Greathead at turn 11. We saw Greathead on the bottom of the screen just a couple moments ago trying to pass Henry King, and now the Commodores are side by side on the way into turn 1, and Coleman gets on the brakes nice and late. Beautiful move. Can he pull it up? It looks like he'll meet the apex and give it a little kiss as he makes his way through. Great move there from Coleman, but the fight for the lead is still on. Bruce Tannock, meanwhile, looks like has had a spin or a crash or maybe a technical problem. Not too sure what's going on for him. It's definitely a crash, and that's big damage there for the 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's such a shame there for car 1, 2, 3. Well, let's see how this finish goes then. It's the final lap. Tim Mulford holding on by 0.3 of a second over Poynton. Yep, a little bit wide there. This is the opportunity that Poynton's looking for. Coming through turn 10. Who gets the better exit? Mulford's struggling. He's going defensive. Here comes Mark Poynton up the outside of the hairpin. It's going to be a late apex and a potential run at the line, but he slides on the way out of the corner, and that's going to be it. Tim Mulford, negotiating the final kink, is going to win Split 2 at Sonoma.
Can you tell I had a favourite in that fight a little bit there, Reese? I was so looking forward to Mike Poynton. I've had an opportunity to talk to him a fair bit, and he's just been on the improve, and it's really, really good to see. I've been enjoying his rise and his improvement in forward. Nothing away from Tim Mulford. It's just that I've seen so much from Mark Poynton, and when you see your driver finally get that realisation and start to really connect the dots, it's an enjoyable moment, and I've just been so lucky to witness that for Mark Poynton and see him come through. I just really reckon a win tonight would have just really put the icing on the cake and shown what he's capable of.
Oh, that's what happened to Bruce Tannock there. Heavy contact with the wall. I'm not sure what happened there. Potentially his throttle pedal got stuck. At least that's what it looked like to me. But in any case, those are your top 10 finishers. Mulford, Poynton and Banks will move through into Split 1 with Henry King finishing 4th and 4 seconds back from Banks. Coleman managing to pass Greathead in the dying laps of the session, with Scott McKenzie finishing ahead of Byron Pierce, who would have been in with a chance there of fighting for the lead. 18 seconds behind the lead. If it weren't for that drive-through penalty, he would definitely have, he would have been up there with them. Peter Pavlovich and Andrew Ritchie will round out our top 10. Steve Vella finishing in 11th place ahead of Bruce Tannock, who did ultimately get to the flag, but limping to the end. Glenn Boyce had a very quiet race there, I think with a couple of incidents of his own. Brendan Murdoch finishing a lap down. Our sole retirement being Rob Crisdale, thanks to collecting the wall out of turn 4. Goodness gracious, what a race that was. I can't wait for Split 1.
Yeah, that was, that just sort of showed, some of the action that can really go on and some of the strategy we're going to be seeing, little bits and pieces of that. Going to be different for Split 1. Don't forget qualifying around this race, around this place in terms of packs. Very difficult. Has to be group qualifying because you cannot fit the whole field out there.
Yeah, indeed. A group qualifying was made for tracks like Sonoma. Well, we'll step aside briefly here on SimSpeed TV while the servers go up. Don't go away, because V8SCOPS is right in the midst of all the action here at Sonoma for Round 8.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
You're watching SimSpeed TV, round 8 of V8 SCOPS for 2024 on this beautiful day in August. My goodness, what a fantastic event it has been so far, with great action in Split 2 despite the small field. Well, now we're going to bring the numbers up by a fair margin for Split 1 action. It is a 2-race format for this one, and we'll go through the strategy information in just a short moment. If you're just joining us, I'm Reese Gardner, Scott Rankin's with me in the comms box, and Jay Kennedy's on production. Well, Scott, if Split 2 is anything to go by, this is going to be a magnificent round for action.
Yeah, it is, and look, I mean, it's also trending us towards the back end of the season as well. We're starting to run out of time to certainly put points together. We're just talking in the break, just off air, about how this is going to work out. 15-minute group qualifying, which means we'll have 2 groups, right? And then the Porsche will get out there and clear the track in between. But there's going to be 2 separate races, both of 29 laps duration. The difficulty for this race, however, is the fuel margin. How far can you necessarily go on fuel you can go about 25 laps on fuel. How do you deal with tires in all that? Because 4 laps worth of fuel, well, that's not necessarily going to cover your tires. So do you opt to put tires on, or do you opt to not? If you're looking for a little bit of track position, if we get a safety car, remember you can't pit at the end of lap 1 if we get a safety car on lap 1, but if we get a safety car on lap 2, come down, grab a splash, just go straight back out. There's no reason. You've got no damage on those tires. Strategy is really intricate here as well. Tires certainly can work, can be relevant, but also could be completely and utterly not worth taking at the same time. Great night to get your race brain switched on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a fun time for sure. 60% fuel tank restrictions. So as you mentioned, it's only going to be about anywhere from 24 to 26 laps on a fuel tank. But I think most drivers are going to run at 25. We'll take another look at Sonoma Raceway here in California. Very close to San Francisco and San Jose, not too far from California's state capital of Sacramento either. This is a beautiful location for sure, right at the bottom end of a mountain range at Sears Point. This track has been around since the late 1960s, and it's been through very minimal changes over the years. The base layout of the circuit that you see 4, 5, and 6 in red there, it hasn't changed all that much over the years, though the surroundings have changed quite a bit. I remember watching old NASCAR races around Sonoma from the 1980s, and the run through the S's at the end of the lap through 8, 8A, and up to turn 10, there were hills right next to the racetrack. It was giving 1980s Bathurst vibes. A bit unfortunate that it's all flat around there now, but I think it helps when there's crashes, so that's a plus.
Yeah, certainly a little bit of driver safety. I guess that's the big change anywhere you look, really, is that driver safety's come up. What does that look like? Well, yeah, unfortunately, sometimes it can take away a few different elements. I guarantee that the final sector's changed a fair bit more as well. The drag strip's now down there in operation as well. Generally, you do see quite a few guys after the race, they'll all pull off and go over to the drag strip. It's one of the fun things to do whenever you do come to Sonoma is go for a burl through the drag strip, because why not? You're all there, you're all having a good time.
Yeah, and interestingly, the drag strip is actually the location of the original start-finish line. The start-finish straight, as short as it is, if you could even call it a straight, was moved to its current location when the drag strip was built and when there were upgrades to the pit facilities. Fun fact, if you're unfamiliar with Sonoma's history, for NASCAR races here, it used to have 2 pit lanes. There was the pit lane that we have. There was also a secondary pit lane on the exit of the final hairpin, just because they didn't have the pit space for the massive NASCAR Cup field. Fortunately, that is no longer the case, and I think a lot of drivers are very glad of that.
I mean, it's unique, isn't it? It just creates something special, something a little bit different. But therein lies the culture of international racing as circuit development. Is one pit lane better than 2? Well, I mean, everyone says that it is. I don't know. I kind of like, you know, Bristol dual pit roads, the layout where you actually do have to recognize where your pit stall is located and get down to it's something unique. It adds character, adds flavor. So for those of you who are sitting there and saying, oh, I'm glad there is only one pit lane, you never tried it.
Yeah, indeed. It's worth noting that the second pit lane on the exit of the final hairpin was very short indeed, so I think they must have had to do some kind of wrangling to make sure that that pit stop times were more or less equal. But regardless, we do have one single pit lane now that the drivers will be visiting. At least once in every single race tonight, that being 2. And everyone is in the server now with 11 minutes remaining in practice. Brody Kostecki is currently on top, but Andrew Gilliam already setting some big times. Brady Myers in car 22 for Trans-Tasman Racing has had a great run over the course of this season, but it really is the Lobs Esports show with James Scott and his teammates making their way into the top echelon of SCOPS competition in 2024. And Kostecki deciding to make a start here at Sonoma. It'll be interesting to see how the real-life driver goes.
I mean, look, this is something that's tumbled around in my head for the entirety of the year for Brody, is I actually feel sorry for the guy. I really do feel sorry for the guy because he's had a lot of weight and a lot of decisions to make over the year. And it's not easy. And he can't talk about it. And he can't share that. And as much as he wants to tell his side of the story, it's absolutely the way he's managed it and the way he's dealt with it, 100% the best way to do it. That adds a little bit of flavor to it. That adds something to the sim racing side of things. Honestly, I've been waiting for him to jump back into the sim and get back behind the wheel because he's just an avid race fan. The guy just loves going racing. That's why he's out here. Yes, sim racing does feed some bits and pieces, but he's having fun. He's been helping out the Lobs guys the entire time. It's just about getting in the car, having fun. Why are we all here? What is the reason that we go racing? Because it's fun. That's what it's all about, and that's what I want to see from him. And he's got a big cheeky grin, and all I hope is that when all this is sorted, you can just see his grin starting to come out. Over the last couple of months, he's finding himself again. He looks happier.
Yeah, indeed. It has been very interesting for me as a fan / pundit, just seeing all of that drama around what's been happening in the real world of motorsport surrounding Brody Kostecki. I think he'll be very grateful for this opportunity to jump into the sim and have a good run. And considering that he's currently P1 in practice right now, well, he has got a lot on the table here. He could come away with 2 wins tonight if he plays his cards right. And considering the lap times, looks like he's in with a shot for sure. Over 1 lap, he is 3/10 clear of the rest of the field.
Yeah, and when I talk to a bunch of different guys, and this actually come from the Oval community, by the way, this comment that I'm about to share, there is no better setup builder in Australia than Brody Kostecki. This guy is a master. That's not come from supercars, guys. That's come from Oval guys. They are saying that about stuff that he doesn't do on a daily basis in real world. The guy just knows his way about a set of tools. He knows springs, he knows cambers, he knows how to set the car, how to rotate the car, to position the car, the aero, the way it all wafts over the car. So he's got a very, very switched on brain, right? It's not just his abilities behind the steering wheel, it's everything he does away with from that. What that does as a driver, it actually gives you an expanded skill set as well, because as soon as you feel something a little bit weird or something's out of whack or the air changes the way that you're traveling around the car, what that says is, oh, I know what that's going to do. My response is this, right? So it says the guy's incredibly intelligent in terms of not just his skill set behind the wheel, his ability to set it up, and then it also says his ability to set up overtakes. And Sonoma requires that expanded skill set.
Yeah, it does. It's so hard to pass around this circuit. It's as close to a bull ring as you can get on the iRacing road course side, save for tracks like Lime Rock Park. It's so difficult. There's no space between the corners. You are braking, turning, accelerating the whole time around this place with barely any opportunity to rest. One of those few opportunities is right there, the run down to the final hairpin. Aside from that, you are trying to control the power, just feed it on, control the rear, and make sure that you don't lock up the brakes into the next turn. Manage your fronts through those medium and high-speed corners. It really is a scintillating experience watching cars race around here, let alone being behind the wheel yourself.
And we just highlighted a really, really critical part of the build towards the Enduro season as well. Rehan Leonage, look who he's been picked to drive alongside for the Enduro season this time by. That's a big vote of confidence from Madison Down to go, yeah, I want you as my co-driver. That says to me, Madison's going, all right, I'm looking to pass the torch. I'm looking to... What's the benefit for me picking one of the best co-drivers that's available right now? There's not a huge deal. I'm not at the best of my game. How about I make sure that I work on building something else, building somebody else, and leaving my lasting mark on the sim racing world is what that decision's about. That is a lot of responsibility for Rehan Leonage. I think he's quick. I think he's got the attitude. I think he's got the abilities. The problem being, right now, he doesn't have the complete package in terms of racecraft and raceability, and you need a Madison Down, you need a Shane Van Gisbergen, you need a Kostecki, a Phil Sell, a James Scott, a Tom Freer, and I can't remember, there was somebody else, the guy won Gardner. Griffin Gardner,
yeah, Griffin
one of the other
yeah.
guys that I was really thinking about. That's the sort of guy you want to partner a Rehan Leonage with, right? Because it just says, okay, we back you. We put a lot of confidence in you. let's build on the mental stuff. Let's talk you through a race. Let's make sure that you're making better decisions going forward. And that's all he needs.
Yeah, and I think the big benefit in terms of Lienage himself is he's young. He is the youngest driver in the field by a long way. And, seeing him develop over the years, just exploding onto the scene a couple of years ago with some fantastic pace. When I found out how old he was 12 years old when he started racing in V8SCOPS. And, it's just incredible to see the pace that he's gotten and what he's built so far in terms of his racecraft. Yeah, it's not all there, you're right, but he's got time on his side.
I mean, he does, but that also creates a different pressure. When you talk to all of these guys, I right now, in terms of that sort of capacity, I really think about Jack Dooham, I think about Oscar Piastri, the Liam Lawson, these sorts of types who are very, very quick from a young age. What it actually creates is an extra sense of pressure. I think Esteban Ocon is actually a really, really good example of perhaps where that's gone wrong. The guy had so much pressure because he knew he was capable, and then all of a sudden he puts himself in really, really bad positions. Is it the driver that's doing that, or is that the pressure that's doing that? So the big thing for Rayhan is to make sure that he separates that. He's got to find a sense of self and a sense of confidence, stability in behind that wheel. Nothing can prepare you for being a child superstar. Nothing can prepare you, and it will break so many people. I think he's had to make some changes. He's a different guy than he was a couple of years back. Is he better? Is he worse? Only he can make that decision.
Yeah, and considering that he's solidly in the top 6 on times at the moment, I think this is great potential for another successful round for Mr. Lienage, and some experience having Brody Kostecki and Yamiras certainly doesn't go astray. Chris Coxhead as well in the midst of all of this, making his return to top split V8SCOPS competition some rounds ago, starting at Winton. He's obviously one of the longest serving sim racers in the AusNZ scene. He's been around for a very long time as Chris, and he has lost none of his pace. In fact, I'd say he has gained pace this year. I haven't seen such success from Chris for quite some time, and you can never count him out at the Enduros. He always pairs with the likes of Brett Loxton at Team Jinx Shifters, and they are always a factor at Bathurst.
Yeah, and think about who he's racing for in the Pro Series as well. I'm pretty sure he's paired up with Brenton Hobson as well. And what I'm thinking in the back of my mind from Chris is, I agree. His name had never crossed my radar before. But then again, that's difficulty for me because it just wasn't in the V8 pool of things up until really, really recently. But he wasn't there when you think of supercars driver. This year, he is there. Has he been a complete package? Absolutely not. I think there's been some flash in the pan results. When he's been brilliant, he's been utterly brilliant. When he's been bad, he's been average.
Yeah, and when your bad is just average, that means you've got a pretty good package under your belt. Andrew Gilliam going fastest in the practice session just then with a test qualifying run. Lobs Esports newest signing there, and he's certainly showing that there's plenty of pace at hand for the 201. The rise of Andrew Gilliam over the past 3-4 years has been something I've really enjoyed watching. He started out with Pursuit Sim Racing and ended up getting his first V8SCOPS win at I believe Canadian Tire Motorsport Park a few years ago. So he's been through a few changes since then. He changed teams a couple of times, but he has gone from strength to strength, and he remains one of the consistent top competitors in V8SCOPS for my money.
How to describe Andrew Gilliam? That is not an easy question to answer, because there's some guys who'll sit there and go, he's been with so many different teams. Do you back the guy in? What's he going to, it's very, very difficult to invest in a driver that does that. And that's the easy way out. I think that's a cop-out. I actually think that comment's a cop-out, personally. That's my own take on it, right? There are people out there that think that's a valid comment. There are people out there that don't think that's a valid comment. I'm in the second group. What can you say about him as a driver? Brilliant. I really, really like the way that he goes about things. He seems very, very composed and sure of himself. I think the big comment when I got to speak to him at one point earlier in the year was, this is the first year I haven't had a lot of other things pulling away. He's been at university, he's been studying, he's put himself through pressure, and what that's meant is his practice schedule hasn't reflected what you would expect from him. He's been come and go, he's been hit and miss. This year's the first time he's really been able to apply himself. He's gone missing a little bit over the last couple of months. I wonder whether or not there's been a little bit of holidays or something in there, which is, a great opportunity first year out of university. You absolutely want to go and reset, refresh yourself. I think it's a great idea. But now he's got an opportunity. He's with the best team on the grid. Now is an opportunity to prove himself. We said last time out before Interlagos, he should look strong. He should be really, really good and consistent. Tonight, that was his grounding himself, bringing him to the fore. Tonight's his opportunity. I want to see him win a race, because the earlier he does that, all of a sudden he starts putting his hand up and going, I'm big, I'm here to stay.
Absolutely. Well, we'll see what Sonoma will have in store for all the drivers we've been waxing lyrical about throughout the practice session. The checkered flag has already flown and qualifying is beginning now. 10 seconds into this 35-minute session. 15 minutes for the first group, 15 minutes for the second group. Half the field out already, and who is leading the charge out of the pits but the most experienced driver in V8SCOPS, Kurt Stenberg of Trans-Tasman Racing.
Oh, who doesn't love a Stenny? Check in, and we get it to start qualifying off, right? It's right up at the pointy end of the field. And have a look at the driver that's there and in behind him. Matt Morris has had to race his way into this split so many different times this year. He's come a cropper, put himself in some pretty risky situations. Stenny's in a really good personal place at the moment. He's made some big growth. The entire TTR team have just had a big old meetup as well. So they're all relaxed and they're all chilling out and really finding themselves in that team culture. I'm curious as to how Stenny feels and what he thinks his next 12 months of sim racing is going to look like.
Yeah, I'm interested to see as well. Well, we see that the drivers are making their way slowly around the circuit here on the outlap, which is what you usually see. You don't want to be burning the tyres on the outlap here. You want to be saving their optimum temperature and pressure phases for the hot lap. And man, it is a pretty warm track out there, 42 degrees Celsius, as we have a Split 1 debut on our hands. Welcome to Joshua Horton for Vermilion Motorsports.
Yeah, great opportunity for him here tonight. Really bet himself in, make sure that he's comfortable, pulls out a great opportunity. And Mark Poynton's going to make his Split 1 debut as well. I'm really, really glad he's taken up this opportunity. Did you get the sense that I really like this guy, that I'm really, really proud to see him doing well?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm happy to see him doing well as well. You know, I've commentated a few races in V8 Vets this year and seen what Mark Poynton can do, and to see him finish on the podium in Split 2 in that fantastic battle with Tim Mulford, certainly a highlight of the night for me so far. But hot laps have already begun for the lead pack here. Kurt Stenberg is going to be the first driver to set a representative lap time in qualifying for round 8, and he's making his way steadily through the S's at the moment. Look at how smooth he is. The car looks like it's turning on a dime at the moment.
Yeah, it's just smooth, composed, all put together. And I think one of the big things for him is going to be making sure that he puts it in really, really nicely. This might just be a banker. He might go out. He might get more aggressive with the second lap. The other trend that I'm getting the feeling is probably going to play its way out. Short lap time here, so you do get potentially an extra lap in or an extra 2 laps in compared to a longer lap, let's say like Road America with a 2-minute lap time. The big thing for me is the fact that I think that track temperature is going to trend down as this session goes on. We may see an improvement, we may not see an improvement in that track temperature in this 15 minutes, but rest assured that second 15, they've got a huge advantage here.
Yeah, they have. That little bit of quiet in between the sessions will cool the track down, and there'll be plenty more rubber laid down. Richie Stanaway is competing in this race as well. He's just gone fastest on a 12.2. Thomas Freeman as well, making his way to the line, and looks like that was a little bit of a slower run to the line than I expected. 14.2 for Thomas Freeman there. Currently last of the drivers. Sho Kanatake as well probably had a few issues on that lap too. 1 minute 28, and it looks like it didn't even count for Sho. So we'll see what the Phoenix Racing team number 86 can do from here.
I reckon that was actually his outlap, and this is going to be his first flying lap. I think Show's actually pitted behind the start-finish line, which is why we got the time on that one. Yeah, Richie Stanaway. I mean, we talked about Kostecki as well. I listened to some comments James Courtney actually made. Oh, Show got quite close to that wall. Richie Stanaway, what a driver in terms of international capability as well. I don't think we've ever seen the best of Richie in Australia. I'm going to be frank about that.
Yeah.
I think his best opportunities always came overseas. We just haven't seen the best of him in this country. I'm going to be honest, I think he got shafted by the V8 supercar community in Australia, but that's life, right? Not everyone gets to be successful and be with all the right teams at the right times.
Yeah, exactly. You know, there's only so many spots on a grid in any given racing championship, and someone's going to miss out who a lot of people would otherwise say, hey, they deserve to be here. Richie Stanaway, obviously known for his European exploits, and he's also known in the AusNZ sim racing community for being one of the early real-life racer adopters of iRacing. He was here when the V8s first came to iRacing all the way back in 2010, 2011, along with Shane Van Gisbergen and Scott McLaughlin as well. Very big names in our community, let alone in the wider racing world now, with SVG racing in NASCAR and Scotty Mack racing in IndyCar for Team Penske. And Richie is also, worth pointing out, a black stripe, former black stripe. Back when the iRacing World Championship was in the Grand Prix series, Richie Stanaway held a pro license, and I believe that was around the 2013 era. So Stanaway's certainly no stranger to sim racing.
No stranger, and of some repute as well. You know, very, very capable, very standout. I like listening to him talk as well. I just think he's always got a really, really good opinion. He structures and talks very, very well. I just love listening to him talk. Yeah, Jay Brazier's in and having a crack at this point in time as well. James Chastanoff. If I don't give James Chastanoff a rough up on broadcast, have we actually ever been broadcasting?
I don't believe so.
Yeah. Chasty, get your act together, mate. You're quicker than that.
Yeah, indeed. 112.5 at the moment for James. But having said that, his practice time was 0.4 slower. So I think maybe a steady improvement there from James in the 427. Let's see what Jay Brazier can do as well in car 057 here with the Hybrid Racing Simulations emblem on the front of the car. Connor Nixon, meanwhile, with a big improvement, just put himself into P6 on a 112.4. Still waiting on the first representative lap times from Freeman, Kanatake, and of course Mr. Brazier. Brazier, the only driver that doesn't have a lap time on the board yet, but that's going to change in just a few seconds. Cut the inside of the final hairpin, smooth out on the exit, lovely stuff. Very short gear ratios used at this racetrack, so you're going up through them very quickly, and a 112.7 will be the first time there for Jay Brazier into 16th place.
Yeah, so that's a representative lap time as well. Mark Poynton's done quite reasonable at the moment to set himself in 14. I'm just keeping an eye on the weather at the moment. I haven't seen a dip in terms of that temperature at the moment, but I can tell you the breeze, 27 kilometers an hour at the moment. So significantly different, and I believe that's coming due from the west. So, yeah, not an easy car to manage and manipulate. I think the server earlier actually was probably about half that wind, so wind's really moving these cars around at the moment.
Yeah, and you definitely feel that in the car. I mean, it doesn't usually affect cars like this very much, but you got to remember, Sonoma is famous for its elevation changes. Just massive up and down runs around this place. You're summiting a couple of hills around this place. So when the car goes light over the crest at, say, turn 3, for instance, you got to be careful that the wind doesn't unsettle you.
So where the wind's sort of hitting is at the crest at turn 3. It's nearly blowing left to right directly across the road from driver's perspective there. Not quite, it's not quite on that angle, but it's pretty close to it. So that'll sort of give you an indication. Where it is blowing true right to left is right down here where Matt Morris is going. So see how he wiggled that car? When he's trying to get the car pointed and braked in, he's getting just about a true crosswind on that car. So as he's braking, the rear end's just sort of blustering around and the thing's buffeting around and not setting properly. So yeah, tricky conditions.
Yeah, very tricky indeed. They're dealing with a warm track. They're dealing with a lot of wind. It's definitely California summer weather at the moment as drivers are finishing their runs and making their way into the pits here. Stanaway in, Latta in, Horton and Gilbert in as well. Aaron Gilbert in car 203, the reigning V8 support category champion. Aidan Cale, meanwhile, we saw him racing quite a bit on Friday night, didn't we? Podiums in both the GTC and the V8. He's racing in split one here for Race on Oz, and what an improvement that is. Up to P5. He's showing himself to be a great rising star, I think.
Well, the thing for Aidan Cale is that he's not got a lot of experience in this car, very, very fresh to it. And when I first started diving into the car, we were pretty much neck and neck. So I'm just looking at him and going, oh, I could have been P5 in this group of qualifying if I'd only had stuck with the car. Nah, I'd rather not invest that amount of time in it. The thing drives me bonkers, drives me crazy just trying to put the laps together. So for Aidan Cale, phenomenal lap time. He's certainly put the work in. Proof's in the pudding, man. It's absolutely paying off for him.
Yeah, and looks like it's paying off for Sho Kanatake as well, who's gotten into the top 10 now. 8th place at the moment on a 1:12.471. Only 0.05 of a second more, and he'll be able to get into P7 past Connor Nixon here, who's currently on another lap. A little bit of traffic, but it shouldn't unsettle him too much. Make sure that you get to the apex. Don't run too far over that curb. You can climb all over the curb on the left there, but you need to be very careful through this section as Corey McFarlane up ahead goes into P3. And only 100th of a second slower than Kenneth Latta at the moment. Richie Stanaway with the biggest advantage of all at the moment. 1.5 tenths clear of the rest of the field. Clean run through turn 10 there for Connor Nixon. Just avoids getting into the barrier on the entry to pit lane. Probably not as tight as he would have liked there through the hairpin, but he straightens out the exit nicely. Let's see if this is an improvement. 1:12.4 is the time to beat, and Nixon will set a 1:12.2, and he makes up into the top 4. That is an incredibly close gap there between second and fourth right now.
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing in it. So 2:23, 2:33, 2:38. So times are all incredibly close together at the top end of things. Not much to deal with it at this point in time. Timmy Mulford, reasonable qualifying at the moment, but this sort of tells you the story, doesn't it? Because him and Mark Poynton are right next to each other. Poynton's got the slight nose ahead in terms of these two. I reckon Mark Poynton might have been a little bit faster in terms of overall race pace had he not been held up. But then again, we'll never know because Timmy got held up in that first stint as well. A couple of drivers in the field that I think are having a really interesting year for their own personal standing and personal development. I actually sat down a fair bit and chatted to Thomas Freeman after the round at Detroit Belle Isle. He's just been there and thereabouts. He's really trying to work on his racecraft. You might have seen Tom actually start a lot from the rear end of the field. There's a reason for that. He wanted to really work on overtaking cars and just sort of changing a little bit of his racecraft up. He's known for having an aggressive attitude, and he certainly speaks his mind over on his streams. He doesn't shy away from that. That's difficult to do because much the way that I'm being quite honest here, and there are times where that absolutely gets under the skin of people. They will certainly bite back and let me know that they're not necessarily happy. That makes it more difficult as a race car driver, though, because you've got to deal with those people out on track, right? So Freeman's having a really, really interesting personal development. He's gone a different way about it, and he wanted to make sure he was really looking after himself. Little bits of personal adjustment right along the way. I think he's improving I think he's growing as a person this year, and that's what the focus has been for him.
Yeah, I think a lot of people underestimate the mental game in any competition. I mean, racing is a mental sport. Yes, it is. And you hear drivers often talking about their mental approaches in the real world, but not many people talk about it in terms of sim racing. All of the same elements apply. You're trying to fend off people who might not have your best interests in mind, and fending off people who would like to spread things about you potentially. But you need to be able to shield yourself from that, focus on yourself, and be satisfied with your own performance. Matt Morris will certainly be satisfied with that. A big improvement to ninth.
Oh, it's a huge lap, so I'm thinking the rubber's starting to get laid down. And I think you've actually hit the nail on the head about a lot of different things, whereby your discipline is probably tested a little bit more in terms of the training and everything that you go about and doing for... You can't be physically unfit and drive a race car at 10 tenths, right? You've got to be. I'm heavy set around that. I don't have the discipline. That's why I'm not a race car driver, because I could just personally, I would not be capable of doing that. That's not where my skill set sort of rests. So you get challenged from a physicality perspective, which builds the discipline, which builds the ability. You sort of get tested on a mindset level with your ability to make sure that you're putting the car in all the right places, you're making the right decisions, qualifying, talking to your engineers. Sports psychology, I think, is very important to sim racing, but it doesn't get talked about a lot, particularly in esports. Just the physicality about it, just the way you set up your sim rig. It's quite crucial, right? Because if you set yourself up in an ergonomically incorrect position, your fatigue level's higher.
Yeah.
You start to wear. You get aches and pains in the joints because you're just not doing things the right way.
Yeah, exactly. That's something that I've actually experienced myself this year, and I've had to. Kenneth Ladder sliding around in the sector there. I've had to plan to make a few adjustments to my sim rig because I've had some trouble with my elbow. I think potentially an RSI from bad ergonomics, and it's obviously even more difficult to manage that for me because I drive with one hand on the wheel. I've got an injury. I can't use my right arm, so that's something that's been at the forefront of my mind. And you make a great point. It's something that I can personally identify with.
Yeah, and it's something I think it was a chat I actually had with. This is going to sound really weird where this actually started off and re-triggered, but I used to do little bits and pieces for managing esports teams, and it was one of the big things I tried to preach was, hey guys, esports careers are very, very short. Don't force yourself down a draining perspective and take everything out of you for something that's going to last you less than 5 years in terms of something a little bit different in terms of sim racing, because you carry on that pace a lot longer. But esports careers are very, very short. So for me, it was about making sure that, hey, we got the experts and we got them talking about the right sort of things, what bits and pieces is just stretching, bits and pieces that can help. It's something that very, very doesn't get discussed a whole bunch. And this is going to sound weird. Daniel Gray was actually the guy that reminded me about it because he streams for so long every day. That sounds weird, doesn't it? Not a guy that's performing at the elite, a guy that's having fun and getting paid to do that. It was the guy that actually made me think about that.
Yeah. I think you don't see it talked about enough in terms of streamers either. People who are online for hours at a time, sitting in their sim rig or at their computer playing games and whatever. Okay, hang on a minute. There's some breaking news that's coming in here. A pit lane start for Richie Stanaway, who's currently top of the qualifying session by 300ths, impeding Joshua Horton on his 6th lap. Okay, so we're going to find that as the checkered flag has flown in the first part of qualifying. Stanaway currently P1. We're hearing that maybe that might be reviewed a bit by race control. It's back under review, so we might have called that a little bit early. But for now, we'll say that Richie Stanaway is provisional P1, but really under pressure from Corey McFarlane. Very close indeed between Latter, Nixon, and Broad. Stenberg, strong P6, just 100th of a second, even less ahead of Josh Horton. Great performances as well from Aidan Cale, Matt Morris, and William Brown.
Yeah, I'm really, really happy with a few of those results towards the back end of the 10. So this is the incident question. Josh Horton that we were right on board with at this point in time. When does Stanaway recognise that he's not on a lap? So he's okay, this isn't impeding here, this is fine, but get out of the way immediately. Okay, yeah, now it's impeding.
Yeah, okay, so race control are reviewing that specific moment right there. Was Stanaway justified in staying ahead? I mean, obviously, there's a pace difference of 0.4 over a lap between those two, but Stanaway was on an out lap, and you would expect him to jump right out of the way to allow Joshua Horton past. So, yeah, let's see if race control agrees with that assessment as we enter the second session of qualifying. The Proven Energy Porsche Mission R has completed its reconnaissance lap, and we are out and away for Group 2, the heavy hitters, which include James Scott, current championship leader, and he is making his 100th V8SCOPS race start tonight. He's sitting on 98. Race 2 will be the 100th time that James Scott puts the power down.
What a history he's creating for himself this year as well. I don't think there has ever been a year where someone has been this successful ever. Just look at the stats. The guy is just. Can somebody? We need to get his water bottle checked. Surely, I don't know. Is he feeding jet fuel into the computer? I have no idea.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I think, you're right. I haven't seen dominance on the level of James Scott since Jared Filsell raced regularly in this series. Filsell, of course, a 3-time champion of V8 SCOPS, and he was notorious for constantly putting it on pole, and when he was in the lead, he just didn't look back, and James Scott, following in the footsteps of Filsell there, as he gears up to start his first qualifying lap. An extra note from race control. Hearing that Horton, at the time, had just completed a personal best for the session, and the incident occurred on what would normally be a cool-down lap. So that's why race control's reviewing it again. It's possible that Horton wasn't actually on a hot lap at the time.
Well, and the other side of that coin as well is from Richie Senaway's perspective, he'll know that, right? Again, we're talking about intelligent racecraft guys that have been around for a very, very long time. 100% would have known that Horton was on a cool-down lap, hence why he wasn't, all that considered. He wasn't rushing back to the pits. Yeah, look, there's a little bit in that, but what do you dally about on the racing line? You're just courting disaster. I think it's silly. Is it impactful enough to start from the pit lane? I'm not going to make that decision. There's a lot that goes into that decision, but that's just when we talk about risk management, race management. That's one of the things. I just don't think there was much of a difficult.
The only issue we're hearing is that Horton was pushing like it could have been a flyer. Maybe he was just in a rush to get back to the pits.
That's a very fair comment.
Yeah, so we'll see. But lap times are coming in now for Group 2. Brett Loxton and Zach Rattray White the first to set times, and going into 4th and 5th, Brody Kostecki and James Scott going to the top instantly. Look at the time there from James Scott, 111.3. Luke Rosella for Lobs Esports as well, right up there with his teammates. And Brady Myers for TTR, splitting them now in P2. Let's see what Gilliam can do here in the Mustang. And he set a low 111. He can certainly set a mid 111 and put himself in 4th. It is the Lobs Esports show at the moment at the front of this field with a cameo from Trans-Tasman Racing.
How about Rehan Leonard as well, also put himself back up there? One of the, we haven't even talked about this historical aspect to this racetrack where there is a lot of history on the circuit. Means that you've got setups to work with. You've done a lot of laps around this place. Your data is still relevant. Little bit of change, little bit of transition in terms of what we're seeing in terms of iRacing trends at the moment. High wind, right? We talked about that coming from the west a little bit earlier on. And a little bit of the change in the Tempest weather package. So that does impact things just a little bit, but nowhere near enough. So there's a lot of history to work on, a lot of data to pull from. What it does mean is that the guys have been here for a very, very long time. They've tested things. They've already sort of got those kinks out. There's not a lot to be found. But what there is to be found is for a rookie. I think this is a really good opportunity for Leonage. I want to see him improve. And by the way, track temp did improve.
Yeah, down to 40 degrees Celsius now, which is good news for anyone in this second group of qualifying. That means there's going to be less heat put into the tyres going through the corners. You'll be able to preserve that grip later on in the lap. Your lap time will decrease, and I think that's a big reason why we've seen those drop-offs there. Sorry, not drop-offs, improvements from the practice times. Remember, Brody Kostecki topped practice on a 111.5, and then Andrew Gilliam went a little bit faster. So that's an improvement of about 0.2 of a second with that temperature difference. Meanwhile, we keep an eye tonight on Brenton Hobson as well in the number 88. Hobbo, obviously a V8 SCOPS veteran himself, and he's gotten his best results at this track. 2018, he finished second in both races. Actually, in all 3 races, I believe. I think that was a 3-race format. No, it was a 2-race format. I've just been reminded. Jay Kennedy always with the stats in the back of his head. He's a V8 SCOPS encyclopedia, something that I have yet to attain despite being part of the commentary crew from the very start. start. But Brenton Hobson, he's looking to go even better here tonight. He's had some great form in V8SCOPS recently. He would have been heartbroken after the supports result on Friday. He's been dominating the GTC in the TCR class and just had a hardware failure coming up to this section of the circuit right here. So he missed out on what would have been a dominant race win in his Audi RS3. Well, now he switched out the turbo 4-cylinder for a naturally aspirated V8 that produces almost twice the horsepower and driving to the rear wheels. Let's see what he can do on this lap.
And have a look at the wheel work, right? It's accurate, it's smooth, but it's not perfect. It's just a kind of tiny little bit of counter correction. There it is at the crest of the hill as well. And pace looks smooth, uses all the racetrack all the way out there. You've got to carry it all the way out to the wall on the left-hand side. If you're not doing that, then you're not really carrying enough speed all the way through that section of the track. Now you get down to the S, it's got to bounce over the curbs because it opens up the left-hand side of the track right here, back to the right-hand side, as much of the curb as you possibly can, opens up the corner again. You can just carry a lot more speed, carry it to the left-hand side, fractional lift, leave it in fifth gear, back down to fourth. Now you'll build the revs down to the final corner, hard on the anchors, all the way back over the nose of the car. Little wiggle in the braking zone. That's how much he's pushing. That's the effect of the win. What's it going to be like when he gets out of the final corner? Out of first gear, uses all the RPM and the run to the line.
Brody Kostecki improves to P1 as Brenton Hobson sets a 1:11.8. Great time from Hobbo, up from 15th to 8th. Fantastic stuff. But how about that lap time from Brody Kostecki? The margin is just increasing every single time. What kind of response is Brady Myers going to have? It's going to be a run into the pits. He wasn't happy with how that lap was going down. What about Brody Kostecki's teammates at Lobs Esports? Andrew Gilliam coming back out of the final couple of turns now. 1:11.4 he needs to improve on. Can he get further into the top 5 here? 1:11.3. The times are getting better and better.
Yep, so rubber's starting to get laid down. By the way, the needle hasn't moved yet in terms of that. So that is just rubber getting laid down at this point in time. It's just the track's improving a little bit. Everyone's getting a little bit more accurate. That breeze still hammering away, still really, really high. It dipped down for a few moments, down to around 21, 22. That's when all those quick times came out.
Yep, cooler air temps as we get an update from race control. That qualifying impedance incident that we saw between Horton and Stanaway in Group 1, they're going to be reviewing that after the event. So we'll be able to have some news on that. Obviously, post-race, we'll see how long race control deliberates over that. They're probably going to have to talk to both Richie and Joshua just to see what their perspectives of the incident was like, to get a clearer picture of things.
Yeah, and I agree. Once all the facts came to light, when we looked at it live, right, we said there's something more in, and that doesn't look right to be issuing a penalty off because Horton didn't fight it too much either. So that makes a lot more sense. Definitely a lot more. There's not worth touching on that anymore. How about Luke Rosella though? Been out of the seat a little bit. New pedals, a little bit of a shake-up. Hasn't been the best season for him. To be honest, the start of the year, he really, really struggled to bring his Lobs Esports machine up to speed. The pace it wasn't there. He was struggling all around. He's rebounded in the middle of the season. Sometimes when you look at things, when you try a new mindset, a new shape of things, you fail a lot first up. A lot of failure for him. Then his pedals fail. Now he's back in the seat. Now he's found himself. This is the best he's looked. Remember, very quick at Sandown. Guess where we're going for in the near future.
Yes, indeed. We only have 2 standard rounds remaining after this one. The driver's choice round at Road America is next up, and then we go to, I believe, Interlagos. Road Atlanta. My apologies. Yep. Yeah. Road Atlanta will be the final standard round of the season, and then we have our 3 Enduros at Imola, Sandown, and Bathurst to end off the 2024 V8SCOPS season. So keep an eye on all of these drivers because you'll be seeing them racing in the Enduros. Jake O'Reilly coming to the end of a lap now. The 222 is down the order in 30th place, and being in Group 2, that means he was in the top 16 in pre-qualifying. So there's a lot of potential for him to go one better here, and he takes half a second out of his time, and that's going to jump him all the way up to 15th.
Yeah, that's much better. That's certainly significantly more representative of what he's capable of. Rough season for Jacob O'Reilly. Looked really strong at the start of the year. The middle of the year's just not looked great for him. Remember, a school teacher from over in Perth as well. So I wonder whether or not that's sort of taken some of the time away that he'd really like to spend. Maybe there's some more marking. At the start of the year, you get a lot more time, right? Because there's no marking to do over the holidays. You get a lot of practice in. You get a really long Christmas period. Middle of the year tends to be quite busy. So I do wonder whether or not that's taking some time away from his potential.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we'll keep an eye on Brody Kostecki as well. I thought for a second he would have gotten an off track there at turn 10. He'll cross the line to set a 1:11.2, and that is going to count. It'll improve his lap time ever further. Seems like he's head and shoulders above the rest of the field, and the gap is small, yes, but in V8 SCOPS, a 1/10 of a second is a country mile.
By the way, update, track just improved by half a degree. That will be worth lap time, so you've got to be out there at this point in time because the track is improving. Hobbo just improved his lap time, jumps up ahead of Zach Rattray White, jumps into 7th spot. So right now, definitely got to be out there, got to be looking for some time.
Yep, absolutely. If you want to improve, now is the time to be out there on track. Andrew Gilliam coming to the end of the lap. And, well, he's going to jump into the pits there. He's going to have one more run at the end of the session. Maybe he's banking on the track temperature dropping ever further in the dying moments of this session. Dylan Pereira improving up to 12th spot there. Nicely done indeed. 1:11.96, which is the exact same lap time down to the 1,000th as Paul Young, sitting in 11th.
Yeah, they'll be separated by 1,000th of a second. That's the rounding on the timing tower. But how about that in terms of getting it in terms of the overall lap time? And have a look at the trend. It's not been a dramatic dip. There's not been a big old curve because the sun's still beating down. By the way, 5 to 4 p.m. local time in sim at this point in time. So the temperature as this race continues on is going to trickle downwards as well. 2:29-minute race stanzas coming up, one compulsory pit stop in both of them. That will tinker with everyone's mindset and the way they go about things. Probably going to be 2 more attempts, I think, in terms of things. And I can tell you Scott and Rosella are both out on track and together. How about Robbie Gibbs this year? Wins himself a Logitech Pro Invitational round. Sometimes you're going to be in the right place at the right time. But that man is celebrating, he's pumping his fists, he's everywhere. You know who I'm actually missing? I wanted to see some Hayden Veld out here tonight. Apparently he's a fan favourite, according to some articles I've seen.
Yeah, indeed. Hayden Veld certainly has made plenty of V8 SCOPS starts in the past, and hopefully he can make a return soon. We might see him in action at the Enduros, you never know. Brady Myers, meanwhile, setting one of his final lap times here in the number 22. Because this is a multi-race server, there is a hard cut to the end of the qualifying session, and so Group 2 is let out a little bit earlier than it otherwise would for a single race round. There is no grace period after the clock runs out for you to complete the lap you're on. So Myers out at a pretty good time right now. We'll see if he can bring the fight to Lobs Esports. A nice clean line there. It could have been a bit more aggressive over the curb, but I've noticed that Trans-Tasman cars, they tend to go for a bit of a different setup direction sometimes. Sometimes they don't ride the curbs as well as other cars do, and that can sometimes be to your benefit, but we're not going to find out if that is a benefit. Into the pits he comes once again. So now it's up to Rayan Leonage to see if he can get any further into the top 5. Only needs 0.04 of a second to put Luca Rosella down to 6th, and, well, considering how close the times are behind Kostecki, if you can get a gain of, say, even 1/10 of a second, that'd be a front row start.
Well, update, track's cooled another half a degree. So remember what I was saying, that it is improving. You've certainly got to be good. And I agree. I don't think the TTR cars necessarily hurdle curbs, bumps around this track all that well. There tends to be an SSR kind of Synergy Sim Racing setup characteristic. And I can tell you this lap right now from Rosella is reasonably good. It looks like he is indeed improving. Myers wasn't able to put all that much in terms of the lap time together, but you've got to be on a lap right now. And there's a bunch of times about to come through this final corner.
All right, let's see what Luke Rosella and Rayan Leonage can do. Leonage just needs to gain 0.044 of a second to battle with Rosella on the lap times they were setting. Rosella will set a 11.4, and so will Leonage. That neither of them improved on their lap time, and that's going to be their last opportunity right there. They're on in laps now, and there's only 1.5 minutes left in the session. Kostecki, meanwhile, Jesus, improving again to a 1:11.19. Where is he getting that pace from?
I have no idea. The guy is just on a mission. So, you know, he's clearly found something. He's found that sense of confidence. He's found himself back again, which is really, really good. That says he's putting a lot of laps in behind the scenes, and finally he just went, yep, I want to race tonight. I really want to get out there. I want to get the elbows out. I want to go and win something. I want to feel some confidence in myself. And he's found himself, got the opportunity to do so.
Chris Cox. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Gilliam has been on fire here today. He hasn't been able to improve on his final run, but we'll see what he can do on this particular lap. 1:11.3. We need to see a few hundredths more out of him, but it's those last few hundredths that are the hardest to get, and he's going to abandon that run. I think that's going to confirm Brody Kostecki for pole position pretty much. Let's see what kind of improvement Brenton Hobson can make in the last few seconds. He should just be able to make it to the line, but he's decided to abandon it as well. Come on, guys. We want to see some laps.
Well, there's 15 seconds left. There's one car left circulating. It's Chris Cox. Look at Coxhead again inside the 10. Inside the 10. Reasonably good lap. He's going to run out of time. He won't get this one in, and you can just see he's just pushing a little bit too hard. Might as well have a drift party. If you're going to run out of time, the lap's not going to count.
Yeah, indeed. Get back into the rhythm of sensing what the car is like when it's in a slide, because God knows that's going to happen quite a few times here at Sonoma. That's qualifying run 1 and done. It is time for the first race of V8SCOPS Round 8, 29 laps on the cards, and the drivers will have to make a mandatory pit stop. Starting from the front row, Brody Kostecki and Andrew Gilliam for Lobs Esports. James Scott will join his teammates there in the top 3, starting alongside Trans-Tasman Racing's Brady Myers, and Luke Rosella makes it another Lobs Esports car in the top 5. Rayan Leonage starting in 6th. Brilliant result there for him. Brenton Hobson will start out of 7th place at a track he's had success at in the past, alongside Zach Rattray White for Vermilion Motorsports, and Chris Coxhead and Robert Gibbs in the top 10. They could be an outside chance if things go wrong up the front.
Paul Young and Dylan Pereira are going to make the first row outside the 10th and 11th and 12th in terms of the group. Jake O'Reilly looks reasonably good. Richie Stenaway, that lap from the first part of qualifying, good enough for 14th overall. Corey McFarlane's going to restart outside of the 15th, off alongside of Brett Loxton. Reasonable pace from him here tonight. Still inside a second to our race pole position. Ken Latta still trying to find some rhythm and some speed from him, off alongside of Connor Nixon. The last row inside your top 20. 19th will be Tyson Broad, just in behind Connor Nixon, and Kurt Stenberg rounds out your 20.
Joshua Horton will start out of 21st place alongside Aidan Cale. Matt Morris behind them, starting alongside Phoenix Racing Team's William Brown. Then James Chastaneuf, the 427 for Banter Alliance, alongside Ben Morris for Phase 4. 2 Mustangs there, and it's 2 Commodores behind them in the form of Aaron Gilbert and Sho Kanatake. Jay Brazier will start 29th alongside Fishy Motorsports' Jamie Dyke. Last few cars will be Mark Poynton and Tim Mulford, our 2 of our top 3 from the Split 2 race. Thomas Freeman and Jake Maloney rounding out our field. Maloney, I think, doing a last to first challenge. He was present in practice, but did not set a time in qualifying. Let's see how far up he gets, considering how difficult it is to make moves here.
Yeah, but that presents an interesting shot. Just on the Richie Stenaway position, I was actually really interested to see what he'd look like starting from pit lane, because I was excited to see a last to first challenge. Maloney's taking up the guards. So, look, you know, I personally like to see guys starting from the rear for a bit of fun and doing some overtaking. I know there's a lot of guys out there that'll sit there and go, we really don't like that. You know, it's, just get elbowed out of the way sometimes. It's fun. I tell you what, Reese, all I've done over the last week is do last to first challenges. I'm just not talented enough to make it all the way to the front.
Yeah, indeed. It's always great to see a last to first challenge get pulled off, and we've seen some brilliant results from Maloney in the past. He did take qualifying a bit more seriously earlier on in the season, but I think he's just decided it's time to just have some fun, get some practice passing cars, and get ready to go here. Let's have a look then at the race start here. as we get the revs up to 7,500 RPM. The V8 Symphony descends over California as V8SCOPS go, and Brody Kostecki bogs it down off the line, immediately loses the lead to Andrew Gilliam. James Scott moves in, and oh yeah, there's some problems in the midfield. Gently does it, coming up to turn 2. A good lead already for Andrew Gilliam in the 201 Mustang. Lobs Esports running 1, 2, 3, 4. Rayan Leonage has not been able to make many inroads. Brenton Hobson, meanwhile, remaining in P7 as everyone's trying desperately to find some space.
It was Jamie Dyke who got turned off the grid. I don't know whether or not he did get a good getaway. I think he might have just bogged down a little bit, and the problem was Mark Poynton got a great getaway. By the way, Maloney got a supreme getaway. Huge stack up though down at 7.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty big there. There's a lot of smoke for the drivers at the rear of the field. Brett Loxton, one of the big losers out of that one. He's got damage to both sides of the front of his car now, but the front of the field has left it far behind. Andrew Gilliam, well, he's going to be in the lead, but Brody Kostecki is coming. Brody has already repassed Luke Rosella to get back into the top 3, and Rosella himself under pressure from Rayan Leonage as the first lap is completed. Let's see if Kostecki can find his way back, and yeah, cars are around at the back of the field. Looks like Jay Brazier.
It was Tyson Broad also got tagged on the way down into the hairpin. Brazil was in behind him as well. It's just been Sonoma. First lap at Sonoma is always carnage, always chaos. Keep your eyes on it. You said it earlier on. It was you that made that comment, Reese. Keep your eyes on a stalk. Yeah, that's exactly what the first lap's like here.
Yeah, you got to be have your sixth sense to see what's happening half a lap ahead of you. The lap is so short around here. You're concentrating so hard on every single corner around here. I love a V8SCOPS race start at this track. This is a good battle eventuating between Luke Rosella and Rayan Leonage. Leonage could be looking at a top 4 if everything goes right for him, as there's more moves further back. Shokan Atake and Jamie Dyke falling behind Tyson Broad as we get another view for what happened to Jamie Dyke. A poor start in front of him, and then he just got tagged.
Yeah, and remember how I said it was, I couldn't tell who got the good getaway. It was the 86 machine that actually had the bad getaway, which was Shokan Atake. Just couldn't get the drive off the start-finish line, forced them into an awkward spot. Remember, it's not a straight, right? It's really, really kinks. So reading where you are relative on the race circuit is very, very difficult.
Keep an eye on Brett Loxton for this replay as well. He goes for the move at turn 4. He just goes way too deep, and he's struggling to keep it clean on the exit, and he gets turned by the Phoenix Racing Team car, does a full 360 and recovers, but he will have some big damage there with a heavy hit to the wall.
Yeah, he's still circulating at this point in time, but he's right down at the tail end of the field. Still got some pace, has managed to catch back up to the guys that right at the back end of the field, but difficult night. And I'll tell you what, when we were talking about race control have their hands full, I think they already have.
Yeah, there's going to be quite a couple of incident reports coming in there, so let's see what race control decides to feed us as the race goes on. 29 laps on the clock. Remember, we discussed towards the top of the show around before qualifying, the drivers will be able to make it a maximum of 25, maybe 26 laps to a tank of fuel. There is a fuel tank restriction for this race, and the question is still in our minds, Scott. Is it worth taking tyres or not?
Well, that's the difficulty. If you can save enough fuel and you can hang on to the top. Remember, we talked about giving yourself an opportunity. Brazil just got tagged, unfortunately. It just goes around. But, yeah, look, I mean, if you can look after those tyres and you can gain some track position doing so, I think you'll hang on to it. You're going to be vulnerable, though. So anyone who does come down and take tyres is going to be a brave, brave man. You're going to need to go at least probably about halfway through the race before tyres are definitely going to be relevant. Anything earlier than that, not worth taking. Remember, safety car's still in the operating. If we get one before the 10-lap marker, anything could happen in terms of strategy.
Yeah, indeed, but I would think it's leaning in the favour of taking tyres, because Sonoma is notorious for eating the rubber. At least it has been in years past in V8SCOPS and in official V8 racing on the iRacing service. The battle for 7th Robbie Gibbs still holding off Brenton Hobson here. Gibbs, remember, started in 10th. He's had a really good first couple of laps, and he's under pressure, obviously, from the Synergy driver. Got Zach Rattray-White for Vermilion Esports right in that battle as well. But we've seen great success from Robbie Gibbs in the past, driving for Evolution Racing Team, one of the stalwart teams, along with Synergy, of the AusNZ sim racing scene.
Yeah, and like I said earlier on in the piece, probably having his standout year. I think he's built off some results that I don't think he thought was ever necessarily going to come his way. But you ride those highs. You know, he is riding those highs. He's still been putting in reasonable work. Is he the fastest guy out of the Evolution Racing Team? Absolutely not. But he's in there. He's putting in the effort each and every week, still improving, still trying to push himself further forward. And the fact that he's got by these guys on the opening lap, now he's starting to check them out. Now he's got control of this pack.
Yeah, indeed he has. They're jetting away from the guys behind, to include Kurt Stenberg right on the back of Kenneth Latta. Got to keep an eye out for Corey McFarlane as well, a driver that has seen a bit of success in V8SCOPS so far. Corey driving for Drop Bear Motorsport now, and it's good to see another Drop Bear car out there. Stenny almost looked for the inside there on Kenny, but it doesn't look like too much of a move to be made. Richie Stanaway's right in the midst of all that as well. Pretty good exit up ahead here from Paul Young, who's trying to get past Chris Coxhead. Chris didn't have a very successful first couple of laps. He is down 2 from where he started, and this is one of the opportunities that he has to make his way back on through, actually having just made the move on Paul Young.
Yeah, so we said, confident guy that's driving really, really well at the moment, and that's it. Pulls to the inside of Paul Young. When you're having a great season, some guys just don't challenge you for those bits and pieces. Cricket's probably the biggest and best analogy, and I think Glenn Maxwell's ride through the World Cup was probably one of the best ways to go about it. Maxwell said it didn't feel out of form, but when you're out of form, you bounce over a bump and all of a sudden the car spits into the fence in terms of a racing analogy. If you're a cricketer, your middle one, you absolutely rocket it, and all of a sudden some guy's taking the world's best catch. That's what it looks like when you're out of form. When you're in form, you pull to the inside of a guy and he just goes, yeah, I'm not interested in fighting that one. You pull off a move, and the confidence just keeps on flowing.
Yeah, exactly. You can really build from there. 10-second time penalty for Mark Point, and looks like netcode contact with Jamie Dyke in the first corner there, and yeah, that's a big shame there for Point, and obviously the start-finish area at Sonoma, very tight indeed, as you can see on your screen right now, and during a race start, there are plenty of places I'd rather be.
Yeah, standing room only. I've seen car parks with more room than that one. And difficulty is, he got a good start, right? The guys on the grid ahead of him, and sometimes that's the thing with being at the back. He recognised, for Mark Poynton, what's he got to lose? Be aggressive, right? I've already shown my bias, I think, where Mark Poynton's concerned for tonight. He hasn't done much wrong there. That's just racing. Sometimes you just got to cop that one on the chin.
Yeah, exactly. He did the hard work in Split 2. He managed to get into Split 1, and there's still another race to go after this, so there is some further opportunities for Poynton to move himself further into the field tonight. Let's keep our eyes peeled then on this battle here between Gibbs and Hobson. It looks like Rattray-White has lost touch with them. I'm not too sure what's happened to Zach in the 117, but it's very easy to make one mistake at Sonoma that ends up ruining a whole string of corners, and they come so thick and fast at this circuit that you really can't afford to be off your rhythm for any more than a fraction of a second.
Yeah, and that's just it. Sometimes this is a really, really tough place to get yourself bedded in and make yourself feel comfortable. The other driver that's sort of feeling a little bit vulnerable at the moment is Rehan Leonage, fallen off the back end of that top 4. Gilliam's doing a supreme job out front, but I do wonder whether or not James got to just be using all those wilds. Remember when we talked to them after Interlagos, though? And the way that they were talking in terms of that team was, Andrew said, there's going to come a day, and it's going to be my day. I don't know when that is. I don't know where that'll be. But when it comes, the team will back me and they'll support me. And it wasn't Interlagos. Could tonight be the night that he gets paid?
Yeah, that is the question, as we see a little incident here for Brenton Hobson over the curb coming up to turn 4. Apparently a big slide here through the 4th corner. Over the curb, the wheels spin, and whoa, there we go.
Well, it's still pointing in the right direction. Nobody saw a thing. Close your eyes for a few moments. You guys didn't see anything at home. Myers just got the job done on Rehan Leonage at the last corner as well. I said Leonage looked a little bit vulnerable. Yeah, he was. Probably overcooked those tyres just a little bit too much early on.
Yeah, and running a little bit deep there as Myers decided, hey, I'm going to the inside here. I think Rayan was well aware of that and thought, yeah, okay, I'm going to let him have this and I'll just run behind him for a bit, maybe save a bit of fuel. But I don't know. If you are planning on taking tyres at the mandatory pit stop, is there any point to trying to save fuel? Because the actual fuel load that you're going to be taking isn't that much.
Yeah. So if you're taking tyres for certain, fuel, you don't want to fuel save. You actually want to create a little bit of a bigger hole in the tank, burn a little bit of excess fuel. So you're not worried too much about it, which is really weird. When was the last time we sat down and said about a V8 Supercar driver, oh yeah, you actually don't need to save fuel? I like the difference in terms of race strategy because it creates some. Sometimes we get a little bit too laser focused in on one race style, and this is all about pace. This is effectively a sprint race here tonight, 2 separate sprint races. This isn't about, it is definitely about looking after tyres because you cannot have a set that overburns tyres at this level, but it's not about looking after the tyre overall.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're unfamiliar with V8 racing on iRacing, we'll let you know about pit stop times. It's usually... I'll leave that point for a later moment because Connor Nixon's just gone around at the final corner and the field's coming through there. He's got to be careful not to move too soon. He's just waiting for a gap here. Oh, that's so painful for Connor.
He's having a year, and to be honest, he's actually had a really, really frustrating week. He was running really well in a NASCAR race on Friday night, and there's something going on here. He's far enough up, and then Jacob O'Reilly gets... So that's not intentional from O'Reilly. He's just got gassed it up, and how many times did we see guys gassing it up and wiggling out of that last corner and split too?
Yeah, plenty of times, and that was a close call for the Jinx Shifters car of Aaron Gilbert. It's something that we saw in the GTC as well, albeit contact between a GT4 and a TCR. When you're trying to make your way up the inside of the final hairpin at Sonoma, the profile of the corner mandates that you straighten it up and narrow yourself on the exit. Oh, lordy, Jacob O'Reilly with some big problems there through turn 10. Yeah, if you have a car coming up the inside, you've got to be careful not to pinch it too much on the way out of that hairpin. So, replay thanks to our friends at Suit Speed. Let's have a look at what happened to O'Reilly here. Looks like, oh yeah, that was a tap. That was a big tap there from, I think that was Matt Morris.
It was indeed Matt Morris. I think he got a secondary touch as well, so he was trying to gather it all back up, so it wasn't just all on his own. Yeah, difficult. I mean, one bit of contact on one lap for O'Reilly, and a secondary bit of contact on the second lap. But back to the Connor Nixon point. He's just right now he's in a rough place. He's got a lot of pace and he's starting to show it. He's put a lot of work into NASCAR at the moment, where he's actually been investing a lot of work. He's just sort of relying on some of the latent talent that he has in the supercar and some of the previous work he did. Friday night was in a good position to take away a podium in one of those series, and a guy missed his pit stall right in front of him in the pit lane. Nowhere to go. Again, when I was talking about when you're having a good year, you're having a really, really good year and these sort of things don't happen, well, he's having a really bad year and that just happens on the road in front of you. There's nothing you can do.
Oh, here we go. Early pit stops from Luke Rosella and Brenton Hobson. This is an interesting call. Lap 12 of 29. I think they... well, is this still on the margin for potentially not taking tyres?
I think these guys are taking tyres. I think these guys are taking tyres. So what they're looking for, the problem that you've got is if it's 2 or 3 seconds static in the lane, you've got to pit early enough that those tyres make themselves feel felt and relevant. If you wait till lap 15, which is right in the middle of the race, and then you pit, everyone else is pitting alongside of you. So the guys that are not taking tyres, they might actually just run this all the way out and go really, really long and let that fuel boil all the way around, unless they think they're faster than the cars relative around them, at which point they will undercut. That's the only time you'll sort of see them. Other than that, they'll probably look to go long, drain the tank down as much as they physically possibly can. 60%, remember, on that fuel tank, so you can get to about around lap 25-ish. So
Yeah, indeed. Well, I guess this is a good time
here
for
we
me to
go.
talk about pit stop times as Brody Kostecki makes his way into the lane, slows down for the limiter line. These cars, you can change 2 tyres if you want, but it takes the same amount of time to change all 4 tyres as it does to change just fronts or just rears. About 10 seconds, and about 10 seconds is Luke Rosella's pit stop time. And fuel and tyres are done at the same time, so he's fueled up and ready to go is Luke Rosella. And Brenton Hobson with a bit of a slower stop, 13.8 seconds. Let's see what Kostecki, Gibbs and Stenberg can do. They are the 3 cars in the pit lane at the moment. Kostecki with a 9.9 second stop. He has nailed that.
Yeah, so that's bang on. That's the number, right? Pulled it up really accurately in the box, gets in, gets out. And the key factor for him is maybe he hasn't necessarily taken tyres because he's come out ahead of Rosella. But remember, if he'd have waited another lap, he wouldn't have. The problem now, look at the traffic that he's in and around. He did clear traffic. He's not going to get it. This is points, and remember, that's just a big wiggle. This is not what Kostecki wanted.
No, for sure. Goodness me, Kostecki having to go offline here to try and make some moves. If he has put fresh tyres on it, he will have the benefit of it. As James Scott will continue on, Andrew Gilliam moving down to second because he is in the lane now as well to respond to Kostecki.
Absolutely have to. If these guys are taking tyres, you can't leave it. You've got to come straight away. 1 lap isn't enough. Look at the traffic, though. Kostecki definitely got held up. I don't know if it's enough to cover it. He got held up again, caught another car. They're in trouble here. This is going to be really difficult.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if pitting this early was a good idea. Probably better off just waiting for the last available opportunity and just getting going there is Gilliam. That was a slow exit from the box, and Kostecki is through. And for that matter, Aaron Gilbert going off the circuit there. He's going to rejoin in a safe manner, at least it looks like, but that was a bit of a scare. And, oh boy, keep an eye out for Tim Mulford there as well. Had to go offline to negotiate Gilbert. So that just leaves James Scott of the Lobs Esports guys at the front of this field. How's he going to respond? Will he come in this time? No, I think he's seen or heard from his teammates what's happened to them after they've come out of the lane, and he's deciding to go long.
By the way, Rattray White overcut on Brenton Hobson, so he got that job done there. I do wonder whether or not Rattray White actually may not have necessarily taken tyres, would have opted for the track position. Robbie Gibbs found a heap of track position, so I think Hobson actually got held up on those outlaps there. Whether or not he did take tyres, if he did take tyres, he's given himself an opportunity. Right now he'll be paying the penalty, but he's going to find some time. The tricky part is we're not going to know here for a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's all in the pit stop time because Brenton Hobson had a slow stop, 13.6 seconds. No one else has had a pit stop that slow. So I think that's the main reason why Rattray White is now ahead. In comes William Brown, James Chastaneuf, Aaron Gilbert and Jay Brazier into the lane on this lap. As we get news from race control, they've decided not to investigate further the incident on lap 1 between Jay Brazier and I wasn't able to catch the second name there. Thomas Freeman. There we go. Righto. So James Scott now is waiting for the opportunity to come into the pits, and he's going to take it right now. Maybe he senses that there's going to be a gap in the traffic for him to slot into, and now that Kostecki is free of that traffic, look at the clear air he's got ahead of him. We know how fast Kostecki is. He qualified on pole position, and he's going to be able to catch him up nicely.
Yeah, I think this is sort of comfortably covered over. He absolutely will have got the undercut here on James Scott. Right before all these guys started the pit lane, by the way, they were bumper to bumper to bumper, all out on the road. So there was nothing between these guys. So whether or not Gilliam might have had a slight pace advantage, obviously a little bit of clear air early on, these guys were looking after the tyres just a fraction better than Gilliam and coming back towards him.
Well, Brady Myers and Richie Stanaway join James Scott in the pits, and Kostecki easily moves ahead of them at 1:11.7 for Kostecki, 11.6 for Gilliam, which is his own personal best in this race. But looks like they have this race under control now. It hasn't been the best of times for Myers and Gibbs. They will fall behind Rosella, Scott and Gilliam. So Lobs Esports for the moment in control of this race with the effective top 3 in hand. Top 4 even.
Yeah, they're doing it's been about clean, concise, very simple, put it all together. They've done all the homework, right? They're on the sim regularly. They're normally socializing, sitting around racing, maybe not necessarily supercars, but the big key is anytime you're on the sim, you're working on your skill set. Even if you're just having fun, you're working on your skill set. Even if you're out there drifting, you're working on your skill set, because that's all different kinds of car control, different levels of balance, different, if you're on the sim 40 hours a week and I just can't do that because I've got a life, well, you're always going to be quicker than me.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting to see as Coxhead and Young are now in the lane. Rayan Leonage is committing to going quite long here. Will he end up running the tank out? Is this the right decision?
You can't know if it's the right decision or not until they all pop out the other side. Jake Maloney's doing significantly well as he gets to the inside of Ken Ladder as well for second.
Oh, Kenneth Ladder sent into the concrete and heavily. The suspension is destroyed there. I think that's the left rear that's become detached. That is going to be a slam dunk penalty for Jake Maloney, I think. And if Kenneth Ladder can't get this going... Yeah, I think this might be a safety car. We'll have to wait and see. He's only got one rear wheel putting power down to the ground.
Yeah, there's the tow. He's just called for it right now. So now there's a whole bunch of battling going on track. By the way, Tim Mulford is in a huge battle pack at the moment. Has not pit yet. He's just wiggled all over the track in front of a bunch of guys. So I think it was Rattray White that's just skated on through. Sho Kanatake just about got rear-ended by Brenton Hobson. So it was Sho Kanatake who now dipped out of the way. He also hasn't pit. Hobson's getting held up here.
Yeah, well, he's going to be aggressive with the dive up the inside of turn 11, but it's covered by Mulford, who's had plenty of experience doing that. But he swerves in the middle of the corner. The rear end just went on him, and Hobson is through. Maloney takes the opportunity to come to the pits. He might have a penalty hanging over his head, but if a safety car is called for Latter, then he'll certainly be okay with having gotten his service out of the way. Latter, miraculously, gets back rolling, but will he be able to get that back to the pits? He's stopped again.
Well, they've just ruled, so the reason that he was trying to do that and trying to get the car out of the way, trying to prevent a safety car, has done that. Got the car so far off the racing line, no longer needed for, air quotes, digital marshals to get out there and rescue that one, which is what you'd need a safety car for. So they've deemed that one okay. Safety car averted.
All right, well, Kenneth Latter able to coax that car off the racing surface, but that's going to be a small comfort considering the incident that caused that in the first place. Well, we will see what race control decide on that one, and well, they've already decided for a 10-second time penalty for Jake O'Reilly on that contact earlier with Connor Nixon. Yeah, it's really been a rough time for Connor Nixon. He and Brett Loxton, along with Kenneth Latter now, our 3 retirements so far from this race.
Yeah, and Triple Two have picked up, so Jacob O'Reilly did pick up a 10-second post-race penalty as well. Everyone up at the front end of point of town right now hasn't pit, all out of the same garage. The Phoenix Racing team have clearly got something on their mind. They think they're going one particular way. The difficulty I have with this is Rayan Leonage's middle and long stint pace wasn't looking supreme. Now, we don't have anyone else out there on the same sort of tyres now. He's definitely the best of them around, but he's going to lose a lot compared to the guys he's in and around. If he just takes fuel, he's going to... I don't think it's going to work. And the tricky fact is he's losing 0.8 of a second a lap. Yeah. Which means in a couple of laps you're already covered off that fuel.
Yeah, indeed. So, yeah, I mean, you might as well just take the tyres and take advantage of the fresh rubber at the end to try and get a few positions back, because you're going to be losing any potential gains anyway. Coxhead getting up the inside of Tim Mulford there. Coxhead on the 3rd lap on these tyres, coming up to the 4th, and Mulford trying to fight back, but you can see just how much better the tyres are on the Jinx Shifters 208.
Yeah, Cox said we talked about just how well he's driving at the moment. Have a look in the meantime, the 201 machine, because Gilliam's getting hunted down at this point in time as well. And James has driven all the way back up to him. But I tell you what, Gilliam's actually responded. He was a lot further back off of Brody Kostecki, so he's all of a sudden found some pace and driven his way just a little bit further forward.
This is another view of the incident between Maloney and Ladder. So similar to what we saw in the Split 2 event, trying to get up the inside of turn 4, but just not enough overlap. And that's a corner that you can't go through when you don't have that significant overlap over the car you're trying to pass.
Look, he had pace, definitely had pace, was the faster of the two cars there, but using your brain, we were talking earlier in the piece about set your move up around this place. That's not setting your move up, that's just trying to pull the trigger at the first available opportunity. It wasn't even an opportunity.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Race Control will take a dim view of that one. In any case, there's still a race on, and Robbie Gibbs trying to keep his position in the top 8 here, and it would be effective 6th potentially, depending on how Ryan Leonage and Dylan Pereira's stops go. Effective 7th at the very least. Gibbs and Rattray White were battling hard. Meanwhile, looks like another move by Jake Maloney, getting past Jake O'Reilly, and a bit of a bump on the way through the hairpin. Got to be careful, Jake. You've already got one penalty hanging over your head. You don't want another.
Just yield, give it back, go back to racing. That's the best way to resolve that one, because that's a pretty much straightforward redress. You will prevent you, provided neither a car's been damaged, and I don't think that Jacob O'Reilly's been significantly impacted out of that. It's just the spot lost on track. So yield, get it done, get back out there and go again.
Dylan Pereira, meanwhile, has the opportunity to play rear gunner for Rayhan Leonage. Here come our effective race leaders, but Kostecki will move right up the inside at the hairpin. At the very least, Pereira can try and hold up Gilliam and Scott here on the way down the start-finish stretch, but Brody Kostecki is the implacable man at the moment. He is setting incredible lap times, still holding the fastest lap of the race. Leonage still hasn't come into the pits. Meanwhile, this just happened here. The overtake for the 117 of Zach Rattray White. He gets past Robert Gibbs at what the marshalling post of this track say is turn 7.
Yeah, good job. Good, clean, concise, and whatever the issue was for O'Reilly, Rattray White, whether or not he got his bars wrong for that first stint, just wasn't quite set up. The car's looking much, much more agile on a lower fuel mix with fresher rubber underneath it. So for Rattray White, watch that for race number 2. Not quick in that first stint, but the second stint the car recovers really nicely. So he might look for another undercut stint in the second race as well.
Rayhan Leonage has come into the lane, so lead of the Phoenix Racing team and lead of the race. He will fall in terms of lap time and in terms of position, definitely behind Brody Kostecki, but how many more positions will he hold on to? Pereira's going to follow him in. I would expect that Mulford and Kanatake will make their way in at the end of this lap as well. Seems like a pretty unified strategy at Phoenix Racing Team. Leonage has only just gotten into the box here as the top 3 made their way past him, and it looks like he's going to fall way down the order here. Might even stand a chance of getting past by Zach Rattray White. No tyres for Rayhan Leonage. You called it, Scott.
Well, I mean, you got to. If you're committing to this strategy, you got to. What does that say, though? The difficulty is, if his pace isn't good, and I'm looking for him to look after those tyres, right? Particularly if he learns from this and cracks on into the second race and continues this strategy. Maybe letting Brady Myers through was about going, I'm trying to look after the tyres a little bit. But have a look how that's worked out. It's 3.5 seconds back from Myers. So overall, has it worked out? He's maintained his position, but he hasn't gained out of it. And the difficulty now, vulnerable to Rattray White. 3 seconds is the margin, only 6 or so laps left to run, so he's got just enough time, but he will be vulnerable.
Yeah, indeed he will. Looks like Dylan Pereira followed Rayhan Leonage in the decision to not take tyres. Tim Mulford is now the only car on track that has not visited pit lane in this race so far, and let's see if he decides to take tyres here. Up to 13th place and could still get a top 20 if he plays his cards right, not taking tyres, but he's continuing to stay out. He is running the tank dry, it seems.
Why not? When you've committed to the strategy of this team, why not? Doing something different. For Tim Mulford, wasn't expecting to be in split 1 here tonight as well, so opportunity, do something a little bit different. And confirmation, 15-second time penalty for Matt Morris for contact with Jacob O'Reilly. Yeah, look, I think that's fair enough.
Yeah, that was the incident we saw where Morris tapped him and went for a big old slide indeed. Speaking of big old slides, Gilliam stands to threaten a couple of big slides here with how hard he's pushing to try and keep James Scott behind him. Remember, James is the championship leader at the moment and the driver with the most wins on the board so far. Here comes Brady Myers as well, trying to chase down Luke Rosella. Myers has fresher tyres than Rosella, but pitted at the same time as James Scott, so might not be able to catch up to James. Definitely might be able to catch up to the number 55, as Mulford's just lost a couple of positions, one of them to Jake Maloney. Kurt Stenberg is making his way past there as well, but Mulford is still staying out, has to make way for the number 40 of Paul Young, and the Phase 4 Commodore will try and get through here, but Mulford's trying to fight him.
Yeah, Mulford's just being, he's just being a nuisance at the moment. And, I think this is reasonably intentional from Tim Mulford, just to be a pest, just to be a nuisance. But again, you committed to this strategy, right? So the difficulty is there's a couple different ways to go about this one. One of them is to just be quite yieldy, because you lose more time by fighting these guys for apexes. So, if you want to be aggressive and you do want to fight them for an apex, well, you're going to potentially suffer some issues sometimes. And look, it's a risk. He's certainly taking a big risk. We can't know if it'll pay off until he pits.
Yeah, and considering there's only 4 laps to go, I'm surprised that Mulford's been able to stay out as long as he has. He's fallen down to 16th now. Surely he'll be coming into the pits at the end of this lap. The next car to get a face full of Mulford is Jacob O'Reilly in the 222. And look who he's together with, Matt Morris, and those two have been around each other all race. There we go. Finally, Tim Mulford goes for the move into the pits as O'Reilly has to try and cover the attack from Morris. Matt with 2 lap fresher tyres than O'Reilly here, and as Mulford pulls into the lane and into his box, we'll be keeping an eye on his pit stop time. It's a 5-second time there, 4.7 by the timing on the production feed, so no tyres for Mulford. How much will he be able to hold on to that?
Yeah, tricky, because he's going to be at the tail end of the field now, right? So, he's still going to keep falling, but at least he's going to have a little bit of a hole to feed into. There's 3 or more cars just coming by at this point in time, so where he feeds in, this will be difficult because they're right there on the track.
Yeah, indeed they are. Well, Mulford gives up another position to Mark Poynton and moves down to 28th position. I tell you what, though, considering the run-ins for a few drivers further down the field and those who have retired, Mulford is still up from where he started by some 4 or 5 positions. So it's been a pretty good race from him.
Reasonable. You also got to remember there was probably 4 or 5 cars on that opening lap as well that ended up going backwards just due to incidents. So net wise, when you look at compared to grid position, definitely better off, but in terms of where he potentially should have been, I reckon he probably could have been 2 or 3 spots further forward. So actually, where he's coming out, he probably wouldn't have gained any time. There's actually a big hole between 27th Mark Poynton and 26th. So overall, time-wise, he's probably lost a little bit. Position-wise, he's probably about where he should have been. So
yeah. But at the end of the day, he will be scored ahead of those drivers that have had issues, and that'll be a few extra championship points on the line for him. Remember, every single position pays out points in V8 SCOPS as long as you can complete the minimum required race distance. So it's worth getting to the finish. That's exactly what Kurt Stenberg is known for doing. He never gives up. He finishes usually in the midfield. Occasionally he'll sneak a top 10 or a top 5, maybe even a podium, but it's consistency of getting to the end that gets you results and gets you championships in V8 SCOPS.
And for a driver that's been around, like, if you want to sit down and say somebody's gonna finish the most races, by the way, that's confirmation of what we all thought was probably going to happen there for Jake Maloney, drive-through penalty for the contact with Ken Latta. So, but yeah, look, you go to your experienced heads, and he is the most experienced, and generally with that, you finish more races. So.
Yep, that you do. Well, Maloney will serve that penalty and come out outside the top 20. It's 2 laps to go at the front of the field, meanwhile, for Brody Kostecki. And despite his slow start, his pace has been insurmountable at this round. Haven't seen a lot of him this year in V8SCOPS, but it's always good to have Brody along for the ride, and he'll continue this consistent run as the white flag flies. Barney is waving the bejesus out of that piece of cloth. Andrew Gilliam and James Scott still embroiled in the battle there for second place. That is still yet to be decided. There's also battles for 11th between McFarlane and Stanaway, 15th between O'Reilly and Morris. There's a three-way fight for 17 between Pereira, Chastaneuf and Freeman. There's battles peppered all the way out throughout this field, but it's this one up the front that we're really interested in.
Yeah, I tell you what, Barney does go. When he does something, right, he does it very energetically. Barney does not do things by halves in the flag stand. Oh, it's good to have a character like that in the service.
Jay just says in our chat, Barney is booked for a shoulder replacement next week. Well, yeah, I mean, he's using that shoulder. It's the final bit of energy that it can expend. Regardless, the final lap begins for drivers further down in the field. The 427 of James Chastaneuf looking to potentially get past Dylan Pereira here and Thomas Freeman. Pereira, of course, remember, did not take tyres, so he's way down on pace. But through the final corner comes Brody Kostecki, and he is going to take the win here in race 1 at Sonoma. Lobs Esports on top. This time, it's Kostecki.
Return to the series, return to form, return to the front step. Race 1 done. After, the only wrong step in that race for Brody was the start, but had to drive his way through it. Chris Cox said reasonable. Corey McFarlane. My apologies, not Chris Cox said. Corey McFarlane would be reasonably happy with an 11th place result as well, holding off Richie Stanaway. There's a few drivers in that mix. You go, yeah, that's probably good. How about Rattray White drives through to 7th spot after starting 8th? Gibbs does get 2 spots up, but I wonder whether or not he may not have taken tyres as well. Ailing at the back end of things. Reasonable night at the office. There's a few drivers up and down the field that have certainly had okay starts to the night. Got to rack it up and do it again for race 2.
That you do. Tim Mulford out there at the moment in the 85, and someone's slow there. That's Aiden Kale. Oh no, he's run out of fuel on the way to the line, I think. Oh, such a shame for Aiden. He was running all right.
He was doing supremely well. Remember what we said, this is a guy that was still bringing himself in. He's driving, he's improving similar to Rattray White.
He's on the ignition trying to get it rolling.
You got to try and extract a result out of this one. I just keep firing it off the ignition. Why not?
Yeah, well, you gotta. Well, it's they've only got 23 seconds remaining on the timer before the race is called, so I don't think Kale's going to be able to get to the finish. That's such a shame. Right at the very end, it is done for Aiden Kale. Oh man, that's got to sting. At least it'll be a lesson learned for race 2. Brody Kostecki, 2.5 seconds was the gap, with James Scott finishing behind Andrew Gilliam to complete the podium. Luke Rosella finishes in 4th place. Lobs Esports dominant here at Sonoma. Myers finishes in 5th ahead of Leonage, who went for the sort of curveball, no tyre strategy. Rattray White gets into 7th spot. He'll be very happy with that, ahead of Gibbs, Hobson and Coxhead to round out the top 10.
Yeah, and then from Overleaf, it's going to go back to Corey McFarlane, like we said. Reasonable night at the office for him. Very happy with that one. Richie Stanaway from Kurt Stenberg drives through to get himself a 13th spot. Paul Young, Jacob O'Reilly, Matt Morris, Dylan Pereira, Thomas Freeman gets inside year 20 as well, so reasonable result for him. James Chastaneuf could have driven better. Chastic always could have done better, and Josh Horton making his debut home in 20th spot.
In 21st place, it was Tyson Broad, with Ben Morris and Jake Maloney behind. Maloney, of course, taking a drive-through penalty in the midst of his last to first challenge. William Brown and Aaron Gilbert round out the top 25 places. Last drivers within a minute of the winner. Mark Poynton, shame that he wasn't able to get his way further forward, but he certainly had some great fights with Mulford and Kanatake right at the very end. Brazier and Dyke round out the top 30, and then Aiden Kale classified a lap down after running out of fuel out of the final corner. Latter, Nixon and Loxton are your retirements. So that's going to round out our field, and we will have a short break here on SimSpeed TV before we go live for the second race here for round 8 of V8SCOPS for 2024.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Well, after race one has been run through the ringer, these rear tyres are about to get another workout. Track temperatures continue to decline as the late summer sunshine starts to peek through the sky from the hills of Sonoma. It looks dirty and dusty in the background. That's because the fields have been baked in summer sun when they got over here to scan. And right now, it kind of feels that way too. Currently 24 degrees Celsius in terms of air temperature, and those of you sitting along at home in Australia might be going, that's not hot. That's not really all that hot whatsoever. The track temp was a little bit up earlier on. The wind's still blustering away at 25 kilometers an hour from the due west, 50% in terms of the humidity. We'll wrap through the grid very, very quickly here in terms of things. It's going to be your finishing results from race number one. Brody Kostecki will start off on the front row after qualifying on pole position out of race number one. We'll do exactly the same for race number two from Andrew Gilliam. James Scott and Brady Myers are going to make up row number two. Brady Myers back starting exactly where he was in race number one. Luke Rosella is going to start off of, sorry, my apologies, Brady. It was Luke Rosella on row number two. Brady Myers will be off alongside of Rehan Leonage on row number three. Zachary Trey White and Robbie Gibbs are going to make up row number four. We'll throw it back to Brenton Hobson and Chris Coxhead, who round out our top 10. Corey McFarlane and Richie Stanaway were the first two drivers outside of the top 10 before we get back to Kurt Stenberg and Paul Young off of 13th and 14th. 15th is going to be Jacob O'Reilly. When in behind O'Reilly, we're going to get to Matt Morris. In 16th is we're going to rattle off through the rows of the grid very quickly. 17th and 18th is going to be Dylan Pereira from Thomas Freeman. Freeman, reminder, started from the rear of the field in race number one all the way through to 18th. Be interesting to see how this one goes for him. 19th spot is going to be James Chastanoff off alongside of Josh Horton for row number 10. Row number 11 is going to be Tyson Broad off alongside of Ben Morris. We'll get back to Jake Maloney after serving that drive-through penalty. Comes home 23rd ahead of William Brown on row number 12. Row number 13 will be Aaron Gilbert and Mark Poynton, who'll be looking for a better start out of this one. Tim Mulford and Sho Kanatake off of row number 14. Row 15, last cars inside the 30, will be Jay Brazia from Jamie Dyke. Aiden Kale will be upset with his fuel calculations 31st. 32nd will be Ken Latta. Connor Nixon and Brett Loxton are going to round out your field from the final row. 17 rows on the grid, and we are approximately 45 seconds or so away from getting a green flag for the final race from Sonoma here tonight. 29 laps in the first installment. Tyres were relevant and very, very important. Rehan Leonage might elect to go the alternate way in terms of strategy. It's all not going to matter, though, if you can't get the drive off, if you can't point it and shoot it all the way up the hill. So that will be goal number one from the front end of the field. Who's going to get that launch? Kostecki bogged the car down, didn't get the first start. With 30 seconds on the clock here, race number 2. You reckon Kostecki can find that launch he didn't find from race number 1?
Yeah, he'll certainly be hoping for it. This is certainly going to be a bit of a difficult run. You know, it's hard, obviously, to get the run off the line, and with such a short run to turn 1, the guys behind him will be hoping he's doing the same because they need that time running in front of him. It's going to be tough, though. We're about to get things going here, and we get ready with live timing available thanks to Grip. You can follow along here as everyone gets ready for the run through here, and we are away once again. It looks like Kostecki did get that better start initially.
And Richie Stanaway got an amazing launch, but I think he might have jumped the start. There was somebody back there. Thomas Freeman's got himself a black flag penalty as well. I think that might have been a jump start for Freeman. Huge contact.
Chris Coxhead is around. And that is such a shame for him. He started in the top 10, and, well, he's going to be all the way at the back of the field now. He's going to have to do an alternate strategy to try and find his way through. Myers is turning up the aggression as well as, oh my God. Yes, indeed. It looks like, I don't know if that was Loxton or Coxhead there that had a spin at the top of the hill there coming through turn 3. It was Aaron Gilbert, the third jig shifters Commodore, that is in this session at the moment. Oh my goodness, the aggression is all the way up here at the start of race 2.
I can tell you, Richie Stanaway timed the jump absolutely perfectly. He's gained spots, so his reaction time was just brilliant compared to the cars that were around him. He gained so much. The problem being, Corey McFarlane got just as good a second phase of the getaway. So Stanaway jumped really nicely. McFarlane got a reasonable getaway. Oh, Stanaway just got pushed into the final corner by Matt Morris.
Oh, and Brady Myers! Oh, that's a massive crash that Brady Myers has just had! Oh, wow! The field's coming by him at full speed. They need to be careful.
He's just had to sat there and wait. Nothing he could have done. Remember I said Thomas Freeman had a black flag? I think that's a jump start penalty, so I think he's going to get that one cleared, get tagged onto the back end of the race, but that's effectively his race destroyed in terms of things as well. Rattray White down to 8th position. As it currently stands, your front 4, Scott got a better getaway, so he's slotted into P2. Gilliam lost that spot off the start.
Yep, he did indeed. Let's take another look at this. Trying to get up the inside of Rattray White was Myers, but they made contact on the exit of the corner, and oh man, I feel like that might be a racing incident deal. I couldn't see any driver who was clearly at fault in that, but regardless, that's an ignominious exit for Brady Myers.
Yeah, difficult, because he had a reasonable race number 1. He was just looking to pick up another strong race 2, and it's just all gone wrong at the end of the first lap. That's to do with the start, though, because think about this. If he gets a reasonable getaway, he's not in that position. Rattray White got a great start, great getaway, puts himself in a bad spot. This will tell us how Chris Coxhead ended up out of position. That was Rattray White.
Yeah, it was a tap from Rattray White there, and that just created a whole bunch of chaos, didn't it? Looks like Kurt Stenberg was right in the midst of all of that as well. So the question is, how did Rattray White get up with Brady Myers as then Aaron Gilbert was turned around? Oh,
it was another one from me. Jacob O'Reilly was right in around that. I was just about to say that. I've got the mistaken identity on that one. There was a second. I didn't think O'Reilly was as far up as he necessarily was, but that matches a lot more. Oh,
and it does. Oh my goodness, Stanny. Easy does it side by side with your teammate in turn 4. Maloney is able to get by the car cleanly that time, unlike he was able to in race 1.
Well, as you can see from the front end of Stanny's car, he's wearing the narrow splitted style of the Holden Commodore. He's gone for a little bit of a trimming around the front end.
Yes, indeed. Probably to channel more air into the into the intake. James Scott, of course, as we mentioned earlier on in the broadcast, currently his 100th V8SCOPS race start. Kostecki is proving very hard to catch, but it'd be really cool for James Scott if he could cap off 100 races in V8SCOPS with another win on the board.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, is there any better way to cap it off? Really? That's the target. I mean, he's already had a podium in race 1. It's not the brilliant race 1 that he necessarily would have liked as Kostecki goes ahead and sets the fastest up of the race. I'm really keen to see if Kostecki actually had the pace to pull away, which we never found out from race number 1. He did certainly have it in the back half of the race, but what's his early run pace look like?
Yeah, that is the question. Well, we'll we'll keep an eye out as the session goes on. We're still very early on in the running here at Sonoma. Meanwhile, Rehan Lienage chasing down the 5th spot that is currently occupied by Corey McFarlane. Rehan Lienage, last race was his 50th V8 SCOPS race start. So yeah, Pat, that's the it's not diamond anniversary, it's silver, gold, I'm not too sure.
Might be platinum. I think it might be diamond actually. Is diamond 20? Was silver's I think 25, or silver might be 10. One of them's 25, and then one of them's Don't ask me. I'm not the right person.
yeah. Me either. Gold is 50, so going for gold for Rehan Lienage. Meanwhile, Jacob O'Reilly, we're hearing that's a black flag for him for contact with Brett Loxton, with Chris Coxhead. Sorry, that was the incident that we saw happen to Coxhead coming into turn 1 on lap 1. So there we go then. Racing incident for the contact that Aaron Gilbert got turned around in. Apparently, Maloney was the aggressor there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just being aggressive hits it up, but that's lap 1 too. Generally the way they look at it and treat it is lap 1. You've got to be aware that more room has got to be left because you're going to be too wide. You're going to be 3 wide in places you normally aren't. So it's on every driver to kind of leave that extra room. Is generally the way that they treat that one. Difficult night, and by the way, update: Aiden Kale I think just had an incident at the final corner as well.
Oh man, after the dizzying heights he was reaching in qualifying in race 1, ending so horribly with running out of fuel out of the final corner. Now he's having further issues in race 2 is Aiden Kale. Defensive behind Maloney there with Paul Young, I believe, trying to keep Kurt Stenberg behind him. These guys have been around each other quite a bit in the past, and we're hearing that there might be a bit more to what happened to Aiden Kale here. Keep an eye out for him here in the JTI team Mustang. That's a Jinx Shifters car coming in very hot. Brett Loxton turned him around.
Yeah, but he got checked up by the cars ahead. I don't know if Brett couldn't see. I guarantee if you go on board with Brett Loxton, there's no way he would have been able to see the cars ahead that were being checked up. There's no real way he would have known that they were being multi-propped up. It's lap 1. It's the final corner. He's trying to send a move, but you don't go 3. That's not a place to really shove the nose 3 wides. That's difficult. This is sort of tell a story. Watch how much you can read here, because Kale's car is just sort of going to cover it all. He gets in here, expects them to pick it up, and they just don't pick up the throttle as early as they thought. Still going to be on him, but yeah, that explains a lot more of the story.
Yeah, a little mini concertina, and to top it all off, Loxton was a bit unstable on the way in as well. Something that we haven't really talked about tonight as the racing goes on here for Corey McFarlane having to give up the position to Rehan Lienage. This is going to be awkward. Richie Stanaway says, no thanks, I'd like to go to the pits. Don't want a single part of that. And here we go. Oh, easy does it. Oh, don't make it 3 wide, guys. Come on. This is super close. Way too close. This could easily go very, very wrong. But they'll stay single file on the way into turn 2. I was going to say, on the run up to the hairpin, there's that dip just as you come past the pit lane entry. If you're even a little bit sideways there, having to make a move on a car, you're going to slide your way in, and Loxton was recovering from a small slide like that at the time as well.
Yeah, he opted to switch from the left-hand side of the track, driver's left to driver's right. So, difficulty there. Lienage has found himself a little bit out of sequence. I actually really like this call from the guys that are opting to go for that mega undercut, because obviously reasonable back end of the stint pace, burned through 6 laps in terms of what the tyre wear looks like, including a standing start, which is not as irrelevant as you guys might think. There's a lot of load, a lot of weight placed through those rear tyres when you're trying to get them launched away. And fastest laps of the race were already half a second off, so you can absolutely pit at this point in time, make a difference. Some of that fuel load's been dropped out, basically going to be topping that car back up to full at this point in time, and I think the right call for Stenny as well. Getting harassed is in a big pack, right call to make.
Yeah, and a bit damaged as well, so he'll be able to assess how bad the repairs really need to be. The fight's still on here for 5th. McFarlane with a fantastic run up the field overall tonight. Remember, he qualified 15th for race 1, worked his way up to 11th. Now he's in 5th in race 2. It's quite a brilliant run from the 094, but Rehan Lienage wants that top 5 5 just as much as anyone does. And Rattray White and Gibbs, we know how hungry they are for yet more success.
Yep, continuing to improve, and Robbie Gibbs, again, we talked about, he's already had probably standout season that he's ever likely to have, I think, this year, but he's still challenging. He's still looking to improve. This is probably one of the stronger runs that he's likely going to have on the season. He's challenging a little bit higher up the grid, and you can also see from Zach Rattray White, that's the damage. That's how much he got beaten and boxed about the ears in that opening couple of laps right there. And Leonage, well, this is the flip-flop of the strategy from race 1. Didn't necessarily work out. Maintain position, not too bad. Going for the alternate strat on this time.
Yeah, pitting early, and we'll see if he still decides to take tyres here. Look, all the Phoenix cars are following him in. They're doing the United strategy once again at Phoenix Racing Team. Well, let's see if this one works out for them.
Well, I think if you're on this strategy this time, I think you got to take tyres, because it is going to matter at the back end of the race. You're not going to get in, get out, and the fuel load. Yeah, look, it is going to make a benefit, but it's not going to be as supreme. I think we learned from that first time through that taking tyres was absolutely the better strat.
Yeah, it was indeed. Here comes Zach Rattray White trying to get past Corey McFarlane, almost taps him on the way through the right-hander, unsuccessful in getting past, and now he's on the headlight flash to try and psych him out. But Corey McFarlane is a hard racer. I'm sure he's familiar with that tactic and has had it tried to be employed against him many times before.
Yeah, the psychological warfare of just a few flashing bulbs, right? A few blinky boys. Yeah, it does absolutely. Sometimes it gets in their head. Sometimes it's just like they don't even see it. So, play your games, do whatever you can. You're a race car driver. Don't do it excessively. That's where you get yourself a penalty. 1 or 2 flashes. Yeah, play yourself into that game.
Yeah, absolutely. In comes Corey McFarlane, though. He's decided, okay, it's time for me to get out of this pack here and get my pit stop out of the way nice and early. He's joined in there by, it looks like Tyson Broad in the other drop bear in Cosi Mustang. Paul Young, Ben Morris, and Connor Nixon also in the pits as well. Looks like Tim Mulford in there as well. And Mulford, okay, I tell a lie. It wasn't all of the Phoenix Racing Team cars that came in at the same time. Mulford, once again, deciding to do things a little bit differently to his teammates.
And remember, this strategy, this difference in terms of the way that this race is being run, this is all being triggered because Brenton Hobbs and Richard Stanaway pitted very, very early. We wouldn't be seeing pit stops up until about now if somebody hadn't pulled the trigger. But they're on the back foot. They've got nothing to lose. Let's throw it out there. And Hobbo's worked it out. He's popped out ahead of Leonage. Stanaway was a touch closer to these guys, but this has really, really worked out for Hobbo.
And look at the response from Lobs Esports. Gilliam and Rosella have decided to come in here. Kostecki and Scott at the front of the field will continue on. Now Matt Morris is going to join those two in the pits. This will be very interesting indeed. Yeah, I'm really surprised at how early everyone's pitting is. Oh, that's off the track there. Connor Nixon, the third of the drop bear cars here tonight, and there's a lot of damage to the front of him there.
Yeah, there was damage placed on those rear tyres as he rejoined. Who was that in behind? Was that... not 100% sure who that was in behind that got very close to the wall. It was 34, so I think that might have been Brett Loxton as he rejoined, so this will tell the story.
Okay, so Nixon trying up the inside of the Phase 4 Mustang, and, well, probably not entirely a solid move, and he paid the price with a head-on crash into the tyre bundles.
Difficult to pass. You got to try and check him out. What he was better off doing was not necessarily taking that one, but just forcing Young to just cover him and flip-flopping him and just continuing that all the way down to 7. And 7's where you trigger the move, but you set it up all the way back there. Maloney's going to pull an early pits. Wow, that much of the field, because of these undercuts, the bulk of the field is now pitted.
Yeah. That's ridiculous, actually. Brenton Hobson down in 18th. Everyone behind him has visited the pits at least once, include Gilliam and Rosella in that, along with James Scott, who's decided to jump in, but Brody Kostecki is continuing on ever further. I suppose with Kostecki in the lead and as good pace as he has the luxury to do whatever he wants on the strategy. He doesn't really need to respond as quickly as everyone else does.
He wasn't pulling away like Supreme.
Oh, side by side between James Scott and Andrew Gilliam. Scott gets a slightly better exit. He'll have the inside for turn 3. Fresh tyres. Out he comes. And the Lobs Esports cars run line astern. Wow.
Bravery, commitment, trust, faith in your teammates, right? So, yeah, look, that could have gotten ugly. And Gilliam threw it out there. He had a crack, right? He had a crack in terms of the strategy. And he's pinned James to something. They're all fighting amongst each other as teammates, but they're also throwing, you know, what you would normally expect to see. It's not just been softly. It's not just been give it over, hand it over. This is exactly how these guys would be scrapping regardless of whether they're teammates. If you were to say they were all single car outfits, this is exactly what they'd be doing. Checking each other up, throwing the undercut, but making sure it's still reasonably clean. Don't get punished.
Brody Kostecki will jump into the pits then, and this pit stop will be round about 10.8 seconds from what I saw on my timing. Does he come out ahead of his teammates? He certainly does, and wow, yeah, I would have expected the undercut to be a little bit stronger than that, but there's potential that Gilliam and Scott cost each other time by running side by side for that brief period. Regardless, Kostecki's so fast that I think it would have been a difficult ask to get him on pit strategy or on outracing him. Meanwhile, Leonage and Hobson battling over what is now P10 and should be effective P7, I think. Leonage so close there, and he's going for the move. Hobson will see him coming and go wide. He'll have the inside line for the next sequence of corners, but Leonage much better on the power. He gets it done.
Leonage didn't want to pull the trigger on that one. He's actually too far back, and it was a big snap of oversteer over the curbs down at 4A. So, you know, it wasn't necessarily lined up. Robbie Gibbs has fallen a long way. That's not as far back as Gibbs. Oh, sorry, my apologies. That's because he hasn't pit yet.
Yeah, Robbie is now the last car to left to take a to visit the pit lane. O'Reilly, remember, has already been in the pits once, but that was for a drive-through penalty, so he still has to take service. But yeah, Robbie Gibbs all on his lonesome out of the front right now as Chasteneuf, Dyke and Latta all pit, and at the moment Rayan Leonage looking at P6 right now. His teammate Dylan Pereira right in the midst of this battle with Kurt Stenberg and Paul Young. Matt Morris not too far behind either. Morris trying to get on the recovery here, down 2 positions from where he started.
Yeah, difficult night at the office for Matt Morris. Remember, made contact in that first race, and now he's just sort of really trying to find a place for him. He's a driver at times that has definitely got pace to slot in here, but he's found himself having to qualify through from the races in Split 2, so not been his most brilliant season. But how about Maloney all the way up and sits at the back end of the top 10 right now? And how about the recovery drive from Myers? Nearly collected another car.
Oh, whoa, that was way too close for comfort. Brady Myers, obviously being a Trans-Tasman racing guy, known for being very good under brakes and being able to assertively make passes when he needs to. And Jake O'Reilly finally comes into the pits ahead of these guys and takes service, and with that the field is cleansed, apart from Robert Gibbs, who is going mega long at the moment. Myers tries again here on the number 86, and, well, with the power out here, he'll get it done by the time they get to the line.
By the way, I just saw Jake Maloney get into the back of Richie Stanaway as they come off the final corner, and he actually passed him on the main straight. So Stanaway's now really struggling with the rear end of that car, and drivers have got 5-lap fresher tyres. You're just about to see Ratro White just centre dive bomb down at turn 7. So Stanaway's now a vulnerable species.
Yes, indeed he is. In comes Robbie Gibbs, meanwhile, into the pits. Last car to come into the lane, and we'll keep an eye on the battles throughout the field as he does so. Ben Morris trying to fight his way through on Tyson Broad. Leonage, since he passed Hobson, has started to gain. And where is Gibbs going to come out is the question. Remember, he was fighting in and around Leonage and Hobson earlier on, up on the jacks and about to complete his stop, but the undercut is going to be very strong indeed. Leonage and Hobson move by him as securely, and it looks like Zach Rattray White, maybe even Stanaway and McFarlane will make their way past him, and indeed they do. Robbie Gibbs rejoins in 11th.
Yeah, but right on the back end of this pack, and he's got, let's say to Richie Stanaway, 9-lap fresher tyres, right? So Stanaway and Hobson were two of the very first takers in terms of that one. Stenberg came a lap later, so he's going to have a real high amount of pace relative to those guys. There's some opportunities in this one. He could drive effectively his way all the way back up to 6. He's got the potential to do that. There's a lot of overtaking to do, though.
Yeah, and a lot of tyre saving with that big slide out of turn 4. Got to be careful on the throttle there, Robbie. But he's got a lot of pace at hand here. He's got Richie Stanaway, who's struggling. Corey McFarlane, who's got 6 more laps on those tyres than Robbie Gibbs has. So, oh man, there's a lot left to go in this race. We've only just begun the 17th lap for Brody Kostecki, who is the fastest car on track. Sudspeed.com replay, meanwhile, of the fishy car trying to make his way past the 86. Jamie Dykes side by side with Sho Kanatake, and a little bit of contact will shuffle him out of the way.
Yeah. And difficult because obviously it wasn't completely clear at that point in time, and that's the tricky part. And this is what I was just groaning about in the background as well. Gibbs just immediately fires it down the inside of him. McFarlane just says, "Yep, not interested. Let's not fight this one."
Yeah, I wonder if Richie Stanaway is going to give him the same luxury. We're about to find out. On the way up to turn 4, almost right on the bumper, aggressive over the curb. Gibbs with a great power out there. He's going to move to the inside. That's a very deep dive there. Will Richie Stanaway be able to keep it? No. And Gibbs will just pull it up in time to make the apex.
Now he's got an opportunity to really show what pace he's necessarily got. Rattray White's about 1.8 seconds down the road. Work to do here from Robbie Gibbs. I tell you what, this is the best he's looked. Since the start of the year, look, the difficulty for me, again, I don't have the grounding and the background over the number of years that you guys certainly have. But in that time, Robbie Gibbs he showed flashes. This is the best I've seen him look, though. He looks comfortable. Oh, there's a car around!
Oh, Hobson! It's Brenton Hobson! Has he collected one of the tyre bundles on the inside of the hairpin?
Well, the damage would suggest that, so that's the splitter lying along on the front end of that car, but the replay's going to tell the story.
So he brakes and turns in, and oh no! You don't often see that. He just clipped the inside tyre bundle there, which sent him head on into the final one. I've never seen that happen before.
Yeah, because normally when you clip them quite hard, right? And you're like, your car's done from the first one. I've never seen a car hit it that softly before. As I think what you're kind of referencing there. And for Hobbo, this will tell another story. This is a painful replay. This is not one he wants to see back again.
Yeah, it was just a little bit of a slide in the rear that sent the car on that trajectory towards the inside. I mean, what I was saying was I've never seen cars actually hit those tyre barriers on the inside before, at least when they've been taking the corner normally. Like, you try to cut the corner as much as you possibly can. There's no off track if you go slightly beyond the curb there. But yeah, usually drivers stay well clear of those tyre bundles. That's just unfortunate there for Hobbo. As more contact in the hairpin, the 966 of Matt Morris makes contact with Paul Young, shuffles him aside, and is going to get the power out. Josh Horton stands a chance of gaining 2 positions here if he plays his cards right. This could get ugly very quickly.
Well, it's difficult to go in here. It's a little bit off camera, and the other side of the corner, I was just thinking, oh, no! Well, I was about to say, I think Matt Morris needs to redress that one, settle it, and go again, because he's definitely at fault if there was a penalty to come.
Well, in any case, Paul Young's going to fall back into a rhythm. At least he'll be hoping so. Josh Horton is right on him now. He smells blood in the water. Keep an eye also on the Jinx Shifters car here that's Loxton there. He's trying to go for the inside here. This is really interesting. Thomas Freeman getting up the inside of Sho Kanatake. Sorry, no, that's the 85 of Tim Mulford. Man, the Phoenix Racing Team cars have not had a great time in battles today. Almost every time I've looked at them in race 2, they've been tapped out of the way by someone.
I was about to say, from Matt Morris's perspective, does somebody want to see if he has a school of Morse code? Because that front bumper has certainly been used to send some messages. I wonder if he owns an Enigma machine as well.
Yeah, indeed. I don't think you'd need an Enigma machine to decode that message. It's probably something along the lines of, please move aside, dear sir, but maybe with a little more vulgarity involved. In
I
any
was about
case.
to say, when was the last time you heard a race car driver use please and thank you?
Yeah. I try to use it when I can. Sometimes it's sarcastic. But... well, another move made for Robbie Gibbs as well. He's just gotten past Zach Rattray White. He's moving further into the top 10, now in 7th and chasing down Jake Maloney, who's got 4-lap older tyres.
Maloney's plus 17. We said how difficult overtaking has been. He's just been ruthless. I actually watched a large part of lap number 1 in my sim from Jake Maloney's perspective. He's just ruthless. Just positioning the car awkwardly for everyone around him and just saying basically, make a bad decision or I'm coming through is basically what he was saying. And that's how ruthless you've got to be a successful race car driver.
Yeah, you got to be willing to chuck it in wherever you can, be aggressive where needed. Meanwhile, that contact we saw for Brett Loxton on Tim Mulford, a redress has been ordered by race control. So let's see where Loxton is. He's... trying to find him on my timing screen, but you see the gap there that he has to give up now. That's going to ruin his race, to say the least, but I think a fair penalty.
Yeah, that's racing. I mean, would you rather a massive post-race penalty, a drive through the pit lane, or just a redress and resettle that one back out?
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of settling out, it is on here between Richie Stanaway and Corey McFarlane. Stanaway steadily losing positions ever since he came into the pits, and McFarlane's been out there for a while too, on currently coming up to his 12th lap on these tyres. There was a big dive there at the turn 7 hairpin, but Stanaway was just instant in his response. It was a very firm no thank you.
Well, no, very firm. I'm going to fight you for it. He just got really, really good traction as he came off of turn 7. So, good race car driving, good aggression, good defense. That's about all you can really ask for is, race me hard, race me fair, and he did race him all the way out the other side.
Yeah, that he did. It was a clean battle. Aggressive, but clean, which is exactly what we'd like to see in this series. So... 8 laps to go for our leaders, and Kostecki once again up to an incredible lead. I don't think his teammates are going to catch him at all, but oh man, Corey McFarlane's certainly catching that at the last possible moment. We're also hearing that Chris Coxhead had issues at his stop. He had a long stop. It didn't take fuel when he wanted it to, apparently. So just an unfortunate mystery issue there for Chris Coxhead.
Yep. So it's happened. I've seen a couple of little pit stop dramas, I think, from a couple of different cars this week. So, and that's actually the second time I've seen a car this week not taking fuel at the stop. So, albeit it is what it is. Sometimes that's the drama. Sometimes you just get something connecting. Sometimes a button gets pressed when you don't mean it to get pressed, and it just switches off that activate fueling refilling. That's the drama of sim racing, isn't it? It is automated. There is a button press that needs to be done. It's not as simple as just going we do or we don't want fuel.
Yeah, exactly. This is a little bit of an adventure there for the 27 of Tyson Broad, and had to recover it a little bit on the way into the hairpin as well. He's had a very tough race indeed, and Richie Stanaway's had a tough time keeping Corey McFarlane behind him. This is the battle for the last position in the top 10. 9th and 10th up for grabs here. And they just need to be careful to hold on to it. Stanaway and McFarlane both up from where they started, only by a few positions each. They've taken advantage of issues for others. And I think both of them will be hoping that, yes, it'll be nice to have a fun, hard battle, but let's keep it clean. Let's preserve a good finish.
Yeah, but for these guys, I mean... you know, when you haven't really been running the entire schedule as these guys have, single races and the individual fights is really what it's all about. These guys will be approaching the race completely differently and driving completely differently around each other. Probably still be just about as aggressive, potentially still, you know, as racy, but they'd be yielding a little bit early would be the big key. Maybe not the big old sense if they were points racing, but you know, that's the benefit, that's the freedom that comes with occasional appearances, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed it is. I find that if I'm making a guest appearance in a championship, I'm taking a more sort of free approach to it. You know, I don't feel as bad about mistakes or having a bad result. You know, you're just flinging it up the inside like the Banter Alliance 427 just did on William Brown for Phoenix Racing Team. Shasti now up to 19th spot there, and he's got to keep an eye out for Kenneth Ladder and Jamie Dyke behind him. It looks like that's a 4-way fight that's starting to eventuate. This is a 6-way fight for 11th spot, covering Kurt Stenberg all the way down to Tyson Broad. It's about to be 7, because here comes Brady Myers on the recovery from his earlier big crash.
Yeah, and still keeping himself in reasonable damage to that car as well, but still keeping himself relevant. How about these two going toe-to-toe as they come off that final corner as well? Horton looking for the drag race off of that final corner. By the way, Robbie Gibbs' pace is stalled back out again. Rattray White responded, driving all the way back up to him. So there's a few little battles they're going to resolve in the final 5.
Yeah, plenty to be resolved with 5 laps to go. Can Tyson Broad get past the number 80 of Josh Horton, who we've already seen quite a few times tonight? Drop Bear versus Vermilion, and the Vermilion car had the straighter run across the crest at turn 3. It's such a difficult corner. You cannot see the exit, let alone the apex, when you turn in for that corner.
Yeah, and bouncing all the way across up there as well. And
oh no! Broad tried on Horton, but it's worked out horribly for him. Round he goes. Careful on the re-entry there. Oh, I got a bit scared there. That was a car going across the front of the frame. Hopefully that was a safe rejoin for Tyson Broad, but he is back in 22nd place now. It's a big shame. He would have been fighting for a top 15 otherwise.
That's racing, isn't it? You just go for a big old set. I'm curious to see whether or not it was a big sensor. No overlap at this point in time. Then all of a sudden, very, very late plunge, dive deep on the brakes, bounces across the curb. Difficult, as Horton left him enough space from that angle. Tough to tell. There'll certainly be better angles that'll tell him, but I think he has. I think he probably has. And the big key will be if Tyson bounced across the curb. If he just picked up the curb, unsettled the car, and drifted him a touch wide, that'll be a racing deal.
Yeah, certainly would. Well, here comes Robbie. Oh, no, here comes Zach Rattray White on Robbie Gibbs, trying to get 7th place back here. Oh, easy does it. They want to try and catch up to Maloney here, but they're not doing each other any favours. Both of them sliding hard here through the S's. And this whole sequence of corners, the way you enter them defines your entire lap. Look at how much of a gap Maloney got on them. It just in that last sequence of about 10 seconds.
It was about a second they lost, and now it's forced Robbie Gibbs to cover. He's pinching fronts, though, so he's wearing, whereas Rattray White's really balanced in terms of the car. You just see the attitude through that final corner as well. Gibbs, couple little snaps, rear end wanting to step out just a fraction, and this is the replay from down at that one.
He locked up.
Yeah, ran a touch wide, so didn't bounce over the curb, but did shoot off from that line. Probably just leave that one alone. It's probably just going to be a racing deal.
Yeah, I get the feeling that will be the case. And this fight between Gibbs and Rattray White, every time we've looked at it, it's just been the same. They've been, oh dear, that is not a good look for Brett Loxton. A drive-through penalty for refusing to follow steward's directions.
That's the redress.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've never seen that kind of penalty reason before.
Yeah, so it's been escalated. So when you get a direction to sort of do something, is do it relatively quickly, because you're being given a direction basically from the guys that are realistically in charge of your night. So what they're saying is basically your option was to redress. Well, you've taken the redress off the table, and that's your choice to take that one off the table. You disagree with that one. Now we're going to hand down the toughest penalty that we've potentially got available to us.
Yeah, I mean it's a typical rule in motorsport and in any sport for that matter that the stewards' decisions are final and can be appealed later if need be. But in the moment, you just got to follow the order.
Yeah. So, and the other thing is promptness. You've got to follow the direction promptly, right? So delaying. As much as Lando Norris delayed at the Hungarian Grand Prix, well, that was a team order. That's why there's no penalty associated with that one, because that's their own directive. Stewards, you got to follow steward directive very, very quickly. It is not a yes or a no. It's do it and do it within 3 laps.
Yeah, not around about 7 like we're being told. The redress order was given on lap 18, and it took about 7 laps for Loxton to actually redress the position. Well, regardless, we'll leave that behind because we have got a lead here for Brody Kostecki of over 5 seconds, nearly 6 now, as it is the final lap of the night. We haven't seen much of Brody Kostecki in V8SCOPS this year. Made a couple of appearances late last year, and oh no, that's big drama right away there. Easy does it. Who was that? Was that Mulford?
It was definitely one of those cars. He's around.
Okay. So a bit of a heart attack for Brody Kostecki, who's miraculously avoided damage there. Even Kostecki's night has not been without drama, but in terms of driving ability, in terms of pace, in terms of managing the race from the front, man, there has been no one better tonight. Plenty of real-world experience, plenty of sim racing experience under his belt as well. He just loves to race, does Brody Kostecki, as Scott Rankin pointed out off the start. But it's a double in Sonoma for Brody Kostecki, who takes the win in race 2, drifting across the line in celebration. Once again, Lobs Esports locking out the top 4 positions there with Scott, Gilliam and Rosella behind. Rehan Leonage will jump into the top 5 there. An excellent job from the Phoenix number 79. Let's see then what caused all of this schmozzle here. It was the 85 of Tim Mulford. He was battling with the Jinx Shifters cars there. So let's see how this all went down. It was a bit of contact on the exit. Oh, it was Chris Coxhead there, and then Brett Loxton jumped into him too. Mulford stopped, and through came Kostecki. I think that was a smart decision ultimately by Mulford. If he'd moved, then that might have resulted in Kostecki running into him.
Yeah, once he was there, he just sort of had to just wait, and we've seen how long a ton of different drivers have had to wait here tonight. And hearing that there was more fuel dramas, Ken Latta will make the line, which compared to race number 1 for Aiden Kale, he will make the line, but did run out of fuel in that final lap of the race. Interesting night from Sonoma. There's always drama. It's just not, you don't get away with anything around here. You don't get an easy night at the office as a race controller. You don't get an easy night at the office as a driver. There's contact at some point in time, and it's about smarts and management. Well, it's so much easier to avoid all that when you're out in front. When you jump back into this series, when you jump back into this level of competition, you don't pull those sorts of results off. Remember, he messed up his start in race number 1, still won both races.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, it hasn't been without drama for Brody Kostecki. And one final replay here of it looks like it's Brown and O'Reilly we're taking a look at here. And O'Reilly finished ahead of Brown, so something happened here. It was a bit of contact at the final corner, and Brown got set into the wall. Oh, he'll be feeling dirty about that.
But from William Brown, so this isn't about a statement about fault or blame on him. This is about racecraft, race management. Will Brown had the run.
Yeah, he did.
He didn't need to cover him. He didn't need to turn all the way across. And I don't think O'Reilly was... O'Reilly's definitely at fault in that incident, but from Will Brown's shoes, you don't turn across like that because you get tagged. What's the benefit in turning across? You save yourself less than 0.01, 0.02 of a second, so why bother? So that's just a silly thing.
Yeah, suppose he might have been afraid of understeering into the outside wall, but that's where he ended up anyway. In any case, Rody Kostecki does the double here. Pole position, fastest lap in both races, led both races, almost lights to flag, with James Scott and Andrew Gilliam completing the podium. Luke Rosella will finish in fourth for the second time tonight. Rehan Leonage makes it one better from his race one result by finishing fifth. Jake Maloney will get the result that he wanted from his last to first challenge, up into sixth spot ahead of Robert Gibbs and Zach Rattray White, who battled to the end. Richie Stanaway finishes in ninth. Good run from him, battling hard with Corey McFarlane all the way to the end.
Outside the 10, we throw it over to the experience campaigner, the man with the most experience in town, Kurt Stenberg. From Dylan Pereira, Paul Young at a 13th. Brady Myers recovers all the way back to 14th. Matt Morris in the New Euro Power entry to 15th. Josh Horton makes his debut, makes it all the way through the field to 16th. Ben Morris, James Chastanoff, Jamie Dyke and Jake O'Reilly round out your top 20.
21st was Tyson Broad, exactly where he started race 2. William Brown will get 22nd in the end after that incident with O'Reilly, coming up to the line with Mark Poynton finishing in 23rd. Freeman and Latta 24th and 25th. Latta running out of fuel just before the line, with Jay Brazier, Sho Kanatake and Aaron Gilbert all the way down to 28th. Chris Coxhead and Tim Mulford rounding out your top 30. Brett Loxton finishing a lap down, Aidan Cale finishing 3 laps down, and Brenton Hobson will certainly be feeling awful about how the race ended for him. Track where he's had a lot of success tonight, just didn't happen for him in race 2. Connor Nixon, the last car, retiring 20 laps from the end. So that is going to round out the racing action. It looks like the first driver we're going to talk to is Andrew Gilliam of Lobs Esports. A second and a third tonight for you, Andrew. Looked like the team was well and truly together.
Yeah, no, the setup was really strong. Big shout out to Brody. Put a lot of laps in this week, getting that up ready for us. But yeah, no, between all 4 of us, we're definitely strong qualifying race.
Yeah, it was always difficult with the mandatory pit stop. There were some drivers who decided in race 1 to forego taking tyres by going long on the first stint. Were you guys considering that as an option?
No, that was never an option for us. We knew we had really strong pace, and even with our good tyre deg, you're more than a second a lap off a new tyre, and there's about 14 laps to go, so with an 8 or 9 second pit stop gain, it didn't really make sense. You'd be so vulnerable, especially if there was a late race safety car too.
It must have been fun battling with James Scott out on track. You guys are running side by side when the pit cycle was complete. Obviously no team orders at Lobs Esports, so probably just having a bit of fun out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to give it a red hot crack this week. Aaron Gilbert, just coming out behind him, hurt me a little bit and made it a bit tighter on pit exit than I wanted. But no, that was a really fun race, especially with Luke there. He kept the pressure on the whole race, didn't make a mistake. So no, it was good battles with the teammates.
Road America's up next. You looking forward to that?
Oh yeah, I love Road America. Good passing, bit of draft. Always lights it up.
Yeah, you can have plenty of lobs, you could say. Well, we want to thank you very much for joining us, Andrew. Is there anyone you'd like to thank before we let you go?
Yeah, big shout out to our sponsors and the team, as always. And thank you guys as well for putting on such a good event, and to the Race Control for stewarding the event. Thank you guys for your efforts.
Andrew Gilliam there, finishing on the podium twice for Lobs Esports tonight, and looks like Andrew's going to be the only driver joining us for an interview, so that means we can look forward to round 9 at Road America, Scott. 18th of August at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern. This is a classic V8SCOPS track as well. It was the championship finale for a number of years, and this year it is the driver's choice round, and a very good choice indeed.
Yeah, I think the reason it made its way on there is everyone looked at it and went, oh, it's been the championship finale. We just all like going racing. Like Andrew Gilliam just said, you can overtake. There's tyre deg, there's race strategy. 6 kilometre laps tend to create something like that. So, unique layout. It always creates a little bit of drama. But at the same time, as a driver, it's one of those tracks where you feel like you're in control of your own destiny. You always feel like you can move forward. You can play a strategy card. You can play some draft games. You can do some fuel saving. It's one of those tracks that really opens it up for everything.
It absolutely does. We look forward to bringing you the action here on SimSpeed TV, whether you come from YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, or Kick. We thank you for joining us for tonight's broadcast, and send our congratulations to Brody Kostecki for a magnificent drive in both races tonight. I'm Reese Gardner. Scott Rankin joined me in the comms box tonight with Jay Kennedy, as always, behind the scenes, pressing all the buttons and bringing you these live pictures. We're SimSpeed TV. We'll see you next time.